Chapter 853. In the depths of the 100 Hills mountain range, humans and beasts were fighting head-on, and the level was extremely high. Both sides were king and emperor level. Unfortunately, Qian Boudoir and the experts of the Qian family who were lucky enough to witness this scene had already escaped to the outskirts of the mountain range. No matter how earth-shattering the battle was, they did not notice it. Huff huff. Huff huff huff, the people of the Qian family bent over and panted heavily. They were secretly glad that they had made it out. Of course. They also knew that they were able to make it out miraculously because the Sect of all times was covering for them, so they were all grateful. Brother. Qian Boudoir stood outside and said sorrowfully, "You and the disciples must come out safely. It doesn't matter if you are injured, I will hire the best doctor and spend the most money to treat you." With hundreds of powerful spirit beasts, he did not think that Jun Changshao would be able to make it out safely. In fact, in the depths of the mountain range, the disciples of the Sect of all times had turned into hellish demons and were crazily slaughtering the subordinates of the King of 100 Hills. Boom! Boom! Spirit beasts comparable to martial kings fell to the ground, blood and limbs scattered everywhere. It was like purgatory on earth. The king-level spirit beasts were dealt with by the disciples. The emperor-level spirit beasts were held back by Jiangye and the others. There was no lack of powerful middle 9 spirit beasts, but they were nothing in front of Ding Xingwang and Gong Sun Haohai. The strongest combat power of the Sect of all times was mobilized. It was not a joke. Based on the current situation, unless there were thousands more spirit beasts in the 100 Hills mountain range, they would not be a threat at all. Roar! Roar! Suddenly, a roar came from the depths of the forest. The ground shook violently, and all kinds of ferocious beasts rushed over under the command. It seemed that the King of 100 Hills had realized that this group of humans was very strong. It would be difficult to deal with them with the higher-level spirit beasts alone, so they could only use the beast tide to attack. Formation! Shui Rengui said in a deep voice. Swish! Swish! The 5,000 members of the War Cavalry Hall lined up. Roar! Roar! Soon, ferocious beasts rushed over from the shadows. Their eyes were red, as if they were in a berserk state. Zhongyi shouted, "Eat the fried rice!" Swish! Swish! The War Cavalry Hall member waved his hand and took out a mouthful of strength fried rice from his spatial ring and swallowed it. This scene, in this austere environment, was more like drinking wine. Clang! Zhongyi brandished his piercing cloud saber and shouted, with the determination to break through enemy lines, "Only death awaits, kill, kill. Kill!" The 5,000 members of the War Cavalry Hall bellowed and unleashed all kinds of spiritual energy, charging toward the tens of thousands of ferocious beasts. Looking down from the sky, one could see trees falling one after another under the influence of the aura. The originally complicated terrain was instantly flattened and turned into a battlefield for killing. There was a huge crowd. Beast tide. They came from the left and right, colliding with each other. Although the members of the War Cavalry Hall had yet to reach Wuzong Realm, they were all at the pinnacle of Wuzong Realm. Furthermore, they were equipped with all kinds of equipment. After eating the strength fried rice, their explosive strength was terrifying. In just a short exchange of blows, the thousands of ferocious beasts charging at the front were mercilessly wiped out without even a chance to resist. Kill! Kill! Puchi! Puchi! Sabers and swords flashed as spiritual energy rampaged. The ferocious beasts charged dauntlessly, charging to their deaths one after another. In just a short moment, more than 10,000 people were killed or injured. The Purple King's mouth twitched slightly. In the past, his subordinates had fought against such well-equipped members of the War Cavalry Hall. Now that he saw them again, he realized that they were much stronger than before. If they fought again, his subordinates would definitely die even more miserably. Jun Changshao was not surprised by the ferocity of the members of the War Cavalry Hall. Instead, he thought to himself, if they were all emperors, wouldn't they be invincible in the interdimensional battlefield? Time passed, and the slaughter continued. More and more ferocious beasts charged out from the darkness, using their bodies and blood to add a bit of terror to this gloomy area. Whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew from the depths, carrying some kind of crimson powder. Not good. Zhong-yi exclaimed, it's poisonous. The crimson powder spread over a very wide area under the howling wind. The members of the war cavalry hall who were fighting the ferocious beasts were careless and were hit by it. Their expressions changed drastically. Despicable and shameless. The Purple King said angrily. In the past, when he fought against the King of 100 Hills, he had been forced to retreat because he had been poisoned by a poison that weakened his body. Roar! Roar! The ferocious beasts charged even more fiercely. However, the group of humans who seemed to have been poisoned suddenly took out a pill and swallowed it. Then, their furrowed brows relaxed, and they charged over with weapons raised. They were not poisoned. Kill! Kill! The members of the war cavalry hall recovered and charged over again with weapons raised. It was surprising that the ferocious beasts could use poison. However, they were still inferior to the 9 Poisons Temple, so the antidote was more than enough. However, Jun Changxiao's gaze gradually turned cold. If they even used something as despicable as poison, who knew what other tricks they had up their sleeves? In that case, don't blame me for being particular. I've sinned. Jun Changxiao said in a low voice, set up the cannons. Yes. Xiao Ziji blasted a ferocious beast away and landed on a high point. He then summoned the field cannon and kicked the barrel, aiming it directly at the dark forest where the ferocious beasts were swarming out. Retreat! Zhong-yi shouted. Swoosh! 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 The 5,000 members of the war cavalry hall retreated and subconsciously sealed their hearing. Purple Craggy Monster King gloated and said, by Chiu, that Punk's subordinates are probably going to suffer heavy casualties this time. Fire! Jun Changxiao said coldly. Bang! The field cannon shot out a shell, creating ripples in the air. Finally, it drew an arc and landed in the midst of the ferocious beasts that were charging forward. They seemed to have sensed the danger and despair appeared in their eyes before they died. Boom! The Qian family martial artists who had just caught their breath were still waiting anxiously outside. They prayed for the sect of all times and hoped that they could escape safely. Suddenly, they heard a loud explosion and were so shocked that they almost fell to the ground. Look! Someone exclaimed. Qian Boudoir and the Qian family martial artists all looked up. Their eyes gradually widened and looked like they could pop out at any time. In the sky, they could see a mushroom cloud that was many times bigger than the previous one slowly appearing. Boom! At this moment, another explosion came, causing their ears to buzz. The second mushroom cloud quickly appeared in their vision. Spatial ripples spread out from that area, creating gusts of wind. This, Qian Boudoir rubbed his eyes and said in a daze, what is going on? Huff! 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 In the deepest part of the mountain range, the wind was howling, and the airwaves were monstrous. When everything calmed down, 2 deep pits with a radius of about 300 meters were blasted out in the place where the towering trees used to be. Countless broken limbs were scattered around the edges, and the soil was dyed red. In front of the field cannon, Xiao Ziji quickly charged 2 shells and said, Patriarch, do you want to continue? Jun Changxiao raised his hand to signal that there was no need. Then, he looked at the deep pits and smiled. The main culprit has been blasted out. A hunchbacked, white-haired old man in a long robe walked out from the depths of the dark forest. His eyes were unusually sharp, and there was even a strong sense of hostility. This was the leader of the 100 Hills mountain range, the King of 100 Hills. Kid! He stopped and stood in front of the deep pit. He looked at the field cannon with a gloomy face and said, what is this thing? It doesn't matter what it is. What's important is that you have angered me, Jun Changxiao said calmly. Buzz! Suddenly, the space in front of him rippled. The old man, who was hundreds of meters away, suddenly appeared in front of him. He reached out his skinny hand with endless killing intent and said coldly, "You have angered me too." Chapter 854. Although the King of 100 Hills was powerful, he was also very sinister. Whenever he sent his underlings out, he would always hide behind the scenes and manipulate the situation. As for the way he used poison, he had learned it from the anthropologists. After the incident at the Nine Poisons Temple, Jun Changshao was very disgusted with the use of poison, so seeing it play like this, he had no choice but to use the field artillery. Field cannons were not as powerful as rocket launchers, but their lethality was great. Using them to bombard a group of dire beasts was undoubtedly very satisfying. Preliminary estimation. At least 20 to 30,000 ferocious beasts were killed on the spot. The King of 100 Hills, who had been hiding in the dark, could no longer sit still when he saw how many of his subordinates had died. Thus, he decided to personally kill this human leader. Hoo! A withered hand grabbed out, bringing with it an intense baleful aura. Jun Changshao had the demeanor of a great general. Facing the spirit beast that was comparable to Wu Sheng, he did not panic at all. He even wanted to laugh. Buzz! Suddenly, the space in front of him rippled, and evil Saint Wu Ju's feminine palms stretched out from inside. Boom! Spiritual energy and beast power collided, rolling up waves of air. Shwa! The King of 100 Hills was sent flying and landed in his original position. He looked at the old man who had walked out of the space and said in a low voice, "So you're Wu Sheng?" "No." Ding Xingwang shook his finger and corrected, "It's Evil Saint." Evil Saint? Could he be an evil cultivator? The King of 100 Hills rolled his eyes as if he was thinking of something. Jun Changshao cupped his hands and laughed, "If I hadn't made any preparations, would I have come here to die?" Brat! The King of 100 Hills' face darkened. "You're the helper that exhibitionist hired. Are you here to avenge him?" From this sentence, it could be inferred that the Purple King must have been naked when he tried to recruit it back then. "No." Jun Changshao said, "I'm here to recruit you. If he could tame a spirit beast of this level, it would definitely be a golden fighter." "Recruit me?" The King of 100 Hills sneered, "Do you think that's possible?" Even the Purple King did not submit to him, so naturally, he would not follow the humans. "It's not a possibility, but a certainty." Jun Changshao laughed. His laughter was terrifying. Buzz! All of a sudden, streaks of light shot up into the sky and enveloped it along with Jun Changshao and the others. Array formation. The King of 100 Hills' expression changed slightly. Shwa! There was no time to think. He hurriedly flew back. At the same time, he gathered a powerful force and blasted it at the spatial barrier. Boom! The power of this punch was quite terrifying, but it only caused the barrier to tremble slightly. It did not directly shatter. Kakik! In the distance, Zhen Dejuan covered his face and laughed strangely. "Is the formation I set up something that you can break just because you want to?" It turned out that the bomber demon had also come. His lack of presence was also intentional, because when the patriarch came, he had instructed him to find an opportunity to set up a formation. While the entire sect of all times was fighting against the horde of beasts, he began to take action. Every time he passed by a place, he would secretly leave behind formation flags. What kind of array did he set up? Dragon Imprisoning Array. This formation came from the Supreme Grade chapter of the Chiman 32 formations. Based on the standards of the Falling Star continent, it was definitely comparable to a Saint Heavenly Sovereign. Of course, its effect was only to bind 10 targets, so Zhen Dejuan could barely set it up. As for the higher-level offensive formations of the Supreme Grade chapter, with his current strength as an array emperor, he would definitely not be able to do it. To put it bluntly, Jun Changshao had already thought of a way to deal with the King of 100 Hills when he sent a large force over. However, he did not expect that 2 shots would blow him out and make him fall into a trap that he had set up beforehand. Boom! The King of 100 Hills did not believe it. He gathered his power again and blasted the barrier. In the end, he still could not break it. He shouted angrily, "Cunning human!" Huff huff. At this moment, a cold wind came from behind. Ding Xingwang flew over and used the power of the 5 ultimate palms. The target was trapped. Whether or not he could subdue it depended on his strength. Boom! Boom! The evil saint of 5 ultimate and the king of 100 hills instantly exchanged blows. One was an evil saint, the other was a high-grade spiritual beast. It was hard to tell who was better in a short time. "You two go too," Jun Changshao said. "Yes." Xiao Longlong and Xiao Moxian flew over. The two of them did not join in. Instead, they leaned on the sides and looked for an opportunity to attack. Boom! Boom! At the same time, the spiritual beasts that were trapped in the array were still being tortured by Li Qingyang, Yi Xingchen, and the others. However, because the main characters were here, Jun Changshao ordered them not to kill them. They only needed to injure them until they lost the ability to fight. Boom! Boom! The fiercest battle was still between Ding Xingwang and the King of 100 Hills. After all, they were both saint level. The power of their attacks was shocking. "I've sinned," Jun Changshao said. "Give me the rocket launcher." "Yes." After catching the rocket launcher, Jun Changshao placed it on his shoulder and aimed at the King of 100 Hills. "Find a chance to separate. I'll give him a shot." Swoosh! Ding Xingwang took the opportunity to fly out. This was an opportunity. Without hesitation, Jun Changshao activated the special effect and pulled the trigger. With a bang, the bullet accurately landed on the King of 100 Hills' body. Fire rain technique. Sky full of feathers. While their master was attacking and old Ding was away, Little Dragon and Xiao Moxian used their skills. Whoosh whoosh. Whoosh. Whoosh, dense fireballs and arrow-like feathers shot out. Whoosh. After a series of explosions, the King of 100 Hills flew out of the smoke and gathered his strength to attack the spatial barrier again. He took many attacks but didn't suffer any fatal injuries. However, he would be in trouble sooner or later. So, the most important thing now was to break the array. Unfortunately, his punch didn't do anything to the barrier. Instead, he was entangled by Ding Xingwang and had to fight fiercely. Little Dragon and Xiao Moxian stood in the distance. Jun Changshao aimed at the King of 100 Hills again after charging the rocket. These three were really shameless. In terms of strength, the King of 100 Hills wasn't afraid of Ding Xingwang. However, he panicked when he saw that there was someone next to him. Boom! Boom! On the other side, the dozens of spiritual beasts were all killed by Li Qingyang and the others. Although the King of 100 Hills was angry, there was nothing he could do. He even found that the array was shrinking and separating, trying to bind himself to a certain space. Damn it! He roared angrily. Lines appeared on his body and he turned into a giant. His head was huge but he only had one eye. So your true form is a giant eye monster? Ding Xingwang sneered and kept making hand seals. The power of the 5 extinction filled the air and turned into palm prints. In human form, the King of 100 Hills could dodge. Now that he had transformed into his true form, his body was countless times bigger and he couldn't avoid being hit. Whoosh whoosh. Whoosh whoosh. On the other side, Little Dragon and Xiao Moxian also used their skills. They attacked at will and could hit the target. Boom! Jun Changshao fired a shot. He didn't even use any special effects and it hit the back of the King of 100 Hills' head. Then, he broke down. Isn't it easier to take hits if it enlarged its body? Is it stupid? Chapter 855. The King of 100 Hills wasn't an idiot. The true reason for activating its true form was not so that it would be easier to take a beating, but because its defense and strength would greatly increase. Beasts only took human form for convenience, only by transforming into their true form could they display their true strength. After withstanding the sneak attacks of Jun Changshao and Little Dragonite, The King of Hundred Hills only had light scars on its surface, but its insides weren't damaged. Hoo-hoo! It clasped its fists together and smashed them into the space barrier. What the King of Hundred Hills needed to do now was not fight, but break through the array formation as quickly as possible and escape from this unfavorable situation. Evil Saint 5 Ultimate Strength was on par with it. There was also Jun Changxiao's Cannonball and Little Dragonite and Xiao Moxian waiting on it. Let alone the King of Hundred Hills, even the King of Thousand Hills would suffer a tragic fate if this continued. Boom! After transforming into its true form, its strength had increased significantly. As its fist smashed into the space barrier, the vibrations it caused were even more intense than before. Patriarch Jin Dejuan said with a sound transmission, "I can't hold on much longer." The purpose of the dragon prison array was to imprison it. If the other party continued to bombard it with such a powerful force, its foundation would definitely be shaken. Swoosh! Ding Xingwang rushed forwards, about to use a palm strike. Hoo-hoo-hoo! A giant hand came hurtling over, bringing with it a strong wind. Swoosh! Ding Xingwang hurriedly dodged, frowning. This fellow's strength is even greater than before. Die! The King of Hundred Hills opened its other hand, smashing it towards Little Dragonite and Xiao Moxian. Its body had enlarged and it had fallen into a berserk state. This palm came crashing down at an incredible speed. Xiao Moxian was just about to spread her wings to protect herself. Out of my way! Little Dragonite kicked her in the face, sending her flying backwards. The entire process happened in a split second. At this time, the giant hand came crashing down with an infinite force. Boom! Boom! Xiao Moxian stabilized herself as she flew backwards. She covered her face and angrily said, "You dare kick me." Her voice came to a sudden stop. This was because Little Dragonite had sunk several feet into the ground. The youth's face was fierce to the extreme. It was clear that he had been wounded by the King of Hundred Hills' palm strike. It kicked me, was it trying to save me? Little Dragonite angrily said, "I said, you are nothing but a burden, hoo-hoo." At this moment, the King of Hundred Hills stomped his foot. Ding Xingwang could save her in time, but just as he was about to rush over, he stopped, because, ta! The Purple King stopped in front of Little Long Long. He raised his head and sneered, "Little brat Baichio, I'll take you on. Loser, die." The great King of Hundred Hills' footprints contained even more power. Boom! At this moment, the Purple King's clothes burst open, revealing his muscular body. He suddenly raised his palms, and an incomparably dense aura burst out. Basic exercise, Wu-Lu. Boom! The heavy and violent footprints were caught by the Purple King. Then, with an angry roar, he flew up against the force. Dang dang dang! The King of Hundred Hills took a few steps back, his eyes filled with surprise. This defeated opponent's aura was far weaker than last time. How could he withstand his kick and still be able to lift him up? If there was an explanation, it would be that the Purple Craggy Goblin King was now a member of the Eternal Sect, and he had already deposited money into his account. Whoosh! At this moment, the evil saint of 5 treasures came from behind. 5 treasures palm. Whoosh whoosh! The evil aura burst out crazily, gathering into a palm that contained 5 different powers. It was like a mountain crashing down. Boom! The King of Hundred Hills had a huge body and could not dodge at all. He was instantly hit by the palm, and the 5 evil auras seeped into his body, causing deep damage. Old Ding's 5 treasures palm was powerful in that it could penetrate the body and cause great damage. Even the toughest spiritual beasts were no exception. Hiss! The 5 evil auras swept through his body like a raging flood. Although the King of Hundred Hills could still resist, his face was already contorted. The Purple King flew up and said coldly, "You don't deserve to be called a king in front of me." Boom! The punch landed heavily on the King of Hundred Hills' head, causing him to stumble backward and almost fall to the ground. Although this was mostly due to the 5 evil auras disturbing the opponent, the Purple King's strength was even more explosive after being tempered in the Sect of all times. Without a doubt. As long as he regained his strength before being sealed, he would only be stronger. This was the benefit of joining the Sect of all times. Don't think that the Purple Craggy Monster King had been enduring all this time for the sake of food and mid-grade beast cores. He had been relying on Jun Changshao to strengthen himself. 5 treasures palm. Ding Xingwang gathered another palm and attacked. Boom! The King of 100 Hills finally could not take it anymore and fell to the ground. The 5 different toxins in his body broke through his defenses and started to wreak havoc in his organs and even his mind. Get out of the way! Little Long Long stood up shakily from the deep pit and said angrily, I'll burn it. Old Ding and the Purple King hurriedly dodged. Little Long Long raised his hand, and hot flames spread out and gathered around the King of 100 Hills, forming a violent whirlpool. Dragon Flame Storm. Whoosh whoosh. The violent flames exploded, forming a pillar of fire. The temperature in the array rose rapidly, causing Li Qingyang and the others to form spirit armor to protect themselves. Ka ka ka, the hot flames collided with the array's barrier and started to distort. Zhen Dijuan's expression was ugly, and he could only remove it. Whoosh! In the instant that the barrier disappeared, the dragon flame storm was no longer obstructed, and it directly soared into the sky, looking like it was about to soar into the clouds. Qian Boudoir and the others widened their eyes. Can someone tell us what's going on inside? Boom! Suddenly, there was an explosion. The pillar of fire suddenly exploded, and the heat wave swept over, burning everyone's cheeks. Deep in the mountains, the heat wave gradually dissipated, revealing a scorched area about a few hundred feet wide. Li Qingyang, Xiao Zuiji, and the others removed their spiritual armors one after another. As they looked at their surroundings, the corners of their mouths twitched. Little Longlong's dragon flame storm was too powerful. Whoosh! Jun Changshao removed the barrier in front of him and said in surprise, the dragon flame technique is really powerful. Plop! Little Long Long sat down. It had completely erupted with a skill that it had just learned and consumed all the energy in its body. Now, not only was it injured, but it was also in a severely weakened state. Hey! Xiao Moxian landed in front of it, indifferently asking, are you okay? You're just a burden. Little Long Long didn't finish speaking before its eyes rolled back and it fainted, its body returning to its lizard form. Xiao Moxian carried it on her back, curling her lips. If you weren't unconscious, I definitely wouldn't have let you off. Shwa! She landed in front of her master and threw it down. Jun Changshao determined that Little Long Long was only unconscious and wasn't seriously injured. He flew up and landed in the dragon flame storm. The 100 Hills King had already entered human form, his entire body charred black as he lay in a deep pit. Not only had this fellow been severely injured by the dragon flame storm, but his organs had also been severely corroded by the evil energy of the 5 extreme elements. He was now in a severely wounded state. Being trapped in an array formation and being beaten by the Sect of all times, it was already quite good that he hadn't died. Can you take it? Jun Changshao took out the high-grade gate palm sphere. In the past, he had used it to subdue the Purple King, but unfortunately, he hadn't succeeded. Go! Jun Changshao waved his hand. Gate palm sphere. Ding! It smashed into the 100 Hills King's head. And as the gate palm sphere fell to the ground, the Taiji diagram began to emit a brilliant light that immediately enveloped the gate palm sphere. Jun Changshao was dumbfounded. You succeeded? You subdued him just like that? Chapter 856. The King of 100 Hills was heavily injured, so Jun Changshao took out the gate palm ball just to give it a try. He did not have any hope at all, after all, he did not succeed in subduing the Purple King back then. However, the less optimistic he was, the more he was surprised. Damn it! Jun Changshao was speechless. If I had known it would be so easy, I would have come alone and brought so many people. Why would I waste so much effort? The system said, the host was able to subdue this beast because it was heavily injured. Otherwise, it would not have succeeded. If that's the case, the Purple King was covered in wounds, why didn't you succeed in subduing it? Jun Changshao asked. The system was silent for a moment, then said, maybe because it came from the upper realm, its potential strength is higher, so the gate palm ball could not be taken. Although the explanation was a bit far-fetched, it did not make sense. After all, in terms of bloodline and core strength, the King of 100 Hills was definitely not a match. Back then, he was able to chase the Purple King away because the other party had just snuck down from the upper realm and had not completely recovered his strength. Secondly, he used some despicable methods. Shwa! Jun Changshao took back the gate palm ball and smiled, great. The King of 100 Hills was comparable to a saint level, and it took so many people to seal it with a formation. Now that it had become his contract beast, it had undoubtedly increased his strength. Patriarch Li Qingyang said, what should we do with these spirit beasts? Tie them all up. The boss of the 100 Hills mountain range was controlled by him, so his subordinates were definitely his as well. Go! Jun Changshao ordered, take the crystal cores, skin, bones, and flesh that are scattered on the ground. Take them all away. Yes! The members of the War Cavalry Hall began to clean up the battlefield. In the areas that were not affected by the artillery shells and flames, there were many crystal cores and the bodies of the beasts scattered around. When all of them were taken away, it could be considered a big harvest. Patriarch Qian. Jun Changshao said gratefully, you are really my big brother. If he did not say that he was going to excavate the spirit stone vein, he would not have come to the 100 Hills mountain range, let alone subdue a saint-level spirit beast. Wait! There was also the spirit stone vein. Jun Changshao said, there should be, right? Shwa! With a wave of the advanced gate palm orb, King of 100 Hills, who had just been sent in for treatment, was sent flying out. He lay on the ground and said weakly, greetings. Greetings, Master. Beasts that had been subdued by the gate palm ball were equivalent to forming a contract. They would only listen to their master brainlessly and would not resist. Are there really spirit stone veins in this mountain range? Jun Changshao asked. Yes. The King of 100 Hills said, but I've already dug it out, leaving only the empty veins to lure the humans. You dug it out? Jun Changshao asked, where is it? The King of 100 Hills said weakly, in my nest, boom. Before he could finish his sentence, the Purple King, who was wearing red underwear, quickly walked over and punched him to the ground. Then, he raised his foot and viciously stomped on him. He angrily said, aren't you very awesome? Aren't you very cocky? Get up and fight me. Jun Changshao was speechless. Even when the other party was in peak condition, you weren't this aggressive. Although the King of 100 Hills was now his contracted beast, he still had a personal grudge with Hall leader Z. It was reasonable for him to let him vent. Boom! Boom! The Purple King kicked him a few more times before Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji pulled him away. Jun Changshao said, you've already scolded and beaten him. From today onwards, the grudge between you two is written off. You must help and care for each other in the faction. The Purple King was stunned. We're going to take in this despicable and shameless fellow. Not only are we not going to take him in, we're going to kill him. We have to kill him. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, Hall leader Z, don't let your emotions affect your decisions. After all, we're going to work together for a great cause. We naturally know how to cherish a strong helper. Speaking of cause, the Purple King's mind had already turned. He said coldly, for the sake of the Patriarch, I won't argue with you. Swoosh! Jun Changshao put the bruised King of 100 Hills back into the gate master ball and said, rest here. Yes. All the disciples relaxed one after another. So comfortable. I haven't had such a good fight in a long time. The members of the War Cavalry Hall gathered in twos and threes, still discussing the battle just now. The battle intent in their eyes had yet to fade completely. They had been training strictly according to the military style, and naturally, they had cultivated the bloodlust of soldiers on the battlefield. Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji were also having a good time fighting. After all, fighting real beasts was much more exciting than fighting beasts created by the life and death secret realm. 2 hours later, Jun Changshao summoned King of 100 Hills and ordered it to lead the way to his nest. It was a natural cave with a complicated environment. When Jun Changshao led the core disciples into the largest cave, all of them widened their eyes. That was because all they could see were natural spirit stones. It was as if a group of explorers had opened an ancient stone door and revealed a golden treasure. It was shocking and exciting. Jun Changshao blinked his eyes and breathed heavily. There must be at least 1 million of them. Master, King of 100 Hills said, this is only 1/10 of them. There are more in the other 9 caves. There were only 1/10 of them here. There were 9 more. 1 million of them. 10 of them would be 10 times 1 million. That's 100 million, plop. Jun Changshao could not catch his breath. He rolled his eyes and fainted. The system broke down and said, 10 times 1 million? How did he calculate 100 million? Oh no! The patriarch has fainted. Quick! Quick! Pinch his philtrum. In the 10th cave, Jun Changshao put all the natural spiritual stones into his infinite space ring. He squatted on a rock with one hand and covered his face with the other. He was grinning so hard that his mouth was crooked. Qian Buduo was right. The spiritual stone mine in the depths of the mountains was very large. There were more than 10 million spiritual stones. I'm rich! I'm rich! Jun Changshao was still squatting on the rock and smiling foolishly. Such a large number of spiritual stones was definitely a huge fortune for the sect. It would not be a problem for the overall strength of the sect to increase by a large margin. Big brother, Jun Changshao said, I love you. The system said, don't you plan to share some with them? I accompanied Big Brother to dig the spiritual stone mine, but he ran away in the end. There are no ores in the mine. How can I share them? Jun Changshao looked innocent. The system said, the host is so loyal. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, these natural spiritual stones can increase the overall strength of the sect. They can help Li Qingyang and the others quickly break through to peak Martial King. I can only let Big Brother down for now. The rich patriarch Qian will probably be grateful to you for saving him, the system said. That was true. Let's go back. Jun Changshao said. He had subdued a saint-level spiritual beast and earned tens of millions of spiritual stones. The harvest from this trip to the 100 Hills Mountains was so great that on the way back, Jun Changshao could not help but sing, come on, let's have fun, we have a lot of time anyway. Chapter 857. Outside the 100 Hills Mountains. Qian Buduo was still anxiously waiting. Although there was no movement inside, he still did not dare to enter. Master, an expert said, I'm afraid Jun Patriarch won't be able to come out. Let's leave. Yeah. Another person said, it's been a few hours. If he's still alive, he would have escaped long ago. Brother. Qian Buduo faced the 100 Hills Mountains and cried out in grief, it's all my fault. But don't worry. His gaze was firm. I'll definitely build the best cenotaph for you and your disciples. I'll bring my descendants here to pay respects during festivals. Brother, there's no need for that. A voice came from beside him. Qian Buduo was stunned. He hurriedly turned around and saw Jun Changshao standing in front of him, munching on an apple. He was so shocked that he took a few steps back. His voice trembled as he said, You. Are you a human or a ghost? Human. Jun Changshao was speechless. Qian Buduo also realized that he had a shadow, so he strode forward and put his hands on his shoulders. He said ecstatically, Brother, you're not dead. I'm lucky to have survived, Jun Changshao said. As they spoke, Li Qingyang and the others walked out of the mountains one after another. Although they were covered in blood, they were all in high spirits. The experts of the Qian family were stunned. From the number of people, the sect of all times did not seem to have any casualties. What had they done in such a long time? The word nothing was used incorrectly. It should be that there were no casualties at all. Although I've killed some of the beasts, there are still stronger ones inside. On the way, Jun Changshao said, so I can only bring the disciples out quickly. As for the spirit stone mine, I think it's better if you don't mine it. Otherwise, you'll lose your life inside. He had taken all the ores, so he would be too embarrassed to say so. He could only lie. Qian Budwa sighed and said, I didn't expect this to be a trap set by the beasts. Of course, I won't take the spirit stone mine. Brother, you've returned safely. Everyone's happy. Also. He stopped and said seriously, if you didn't accompany me on this trip, I'm afraid I would have died in the 100 Hills Mountains. Truth. If he hadn't asked Jun Changshao for help and brought the experts from the other sects here, he would have long become the mud under the feet of the ferocious beasts. In order to express his gratitude, Qian Budwa handed over a space ring and said, Brother, there are 100,000 natural spirit stones in this ring. Just treat it as compensation for following me here for nothing. Big brother. Jun Changshao declined, I can't accept it. He really didn't want it. After all, he would feel a little guilty if he received 10 million spirit stones. Why would he care about 100,000 spirit stones? Brother, you must accept these spirit stones. He didn't have much money, but he had to force it. After a heated argument, Jun Changshao could only reluctantly accept it. The group returned the way they came. The spirit beast subordinates of the King of 100 Hills who were relatively strong transformed into their human forms and followed them in the dark. Since their boss had surrendered, they had no choice but to submit. There were at least 30 to 50 beast kings and 7 or 8 beast emperors. If he planned to bring them to the spirit beast hall, their strength would increase further. And so, Jun Changshao was even more confident in going to the planar battlefield to fight. After traveling for 2 days, they reached a fork in the road. Qian Budwa clasped his hands and said, Brother, we'll meet again. Big brother. Jun Changshao said, Goodbye. After Qian Budwa left, the vicious beasts hiding in the dark could finally appear in the open. The King of 100 Hills' vicious beast army wasn't small either. There were about 200,000 of them. Jun Changshao planned to stuff them all into the Iron Bone Mountain and raise them with beast cores. The sect of all times didn't have many disciples, but the beast race army had reached 600,000 or 700,000. This was enough to make a great achievement. Unfortunately, Jun Patriarch's thoughts were on developing the sect. He didn't have any thoughts of conquering the world. The reason he took in the beast race army and subdued the King of 100 Hills was so that he could smoothly carry out his robbery plan when he entered the Spiritus continent. Sect of all times. Jun Changshao returned and placed the 200,000 vicious beasts deep within the Iron Bone Mountain. Patriarch Shui Rengui said, the vicious beasts are fierce because they fight in the wild all year round. If we keep them in captivity, they will lose their ferocity over time. Makes sense, Jun Changshao said. It was obvious who was stronger between a lion in captivity and a lion in the wild. What do you suggest? In this subordinate's opinion, why don't we train them together so that they can familiarize themselves with tactics? Jun Changshao's mouth twitched. Training humans can no longer satisfy me, the head of the war cavalry hall. I'm starting to have thoughts of training vicious beasts. Under normal circumstances, Shui Rengui definitely wouldn't think about it. But since the vicious beasts could listen to orders, it wasn't impossible to carry out military training. Moreover, if they were really trained, their combat strength couldn't be ignored. Okay. Jun Changshao said, I'll leave it to you. Patriarch. Shui Rengui thought for a moment and said, that psychic cat can speak human language and communicate with vicious beasts. Can you give it to my war cavalry hall? No problem, Jun Changshao said. Ah, in the room, the psychic cat clung to the door and cried, "I don't want to go. I want to stay." Boom! Xiao Moxian pressed it to the ground and rubbed its face against the floor. She said, "This is Master's order. You must obey." After being tortured, the psychic cat comfortably reported to the war cavalry hall with tears in its eyes. Training vicious beasts was undoubtedly very challenging. However, Jun Changshao believed that with Xueren Gui and Tao Yuan around, there shouldn't be any problems. Next, sitting on a chair, one hand supporting the side of his face, he muttered, "It's time to think about how to distribute the natural spirit stones so that the disciples can improve faster." On the day of the epic-level mission, with enough resources, Li Qingyang and the other core disciples were confident that they could break through to the peak of Martial King. However, there was no hope for them to break through to the Emperor level unless they had a better pill formula. Wu Huang Pill, Wu Huang Pill. Jun Changshao opened the high-level store and carefully looked through the goods inside. He didn't find any high-grade pill formulas that could raise one's cultivation level, so he could only focus on other things. Wait! His eyes fell on a formula called Surge Talisman. He clicked on it and the introduction appeared. Item: Surge Talisman Formula Introduction. After purchasing, you can obtain the formula to refine the Surge Talisman. Effect: Crush the refined Surge Talisman and raise one's cultivation level by a large level. Advantage: after using it, you will have a higher cultivation level and stronger strength. It can also be convenient to peak at high-level martial arts and is beneficial for breaking through. Disadvantage: the user must be at the highest level of a certain cultivation level. The effect lasts for 2 hours. After the effect expires, you will drop one's cultivation level. The effect lasts for 2 hours. Price: 10,000 contribution points. Jun Changshao rubbed his chin and said, "After using it, can Qingyang and Zueji enter the dimensional battlefield?" The system said, "They should be able to." "I'll buy it." Ding! Host has spent 10,000 contribution points and obtained Surge Talisman Formula X1. It has been transferred to the spatial ring. Ding! Contribution points, 24480500000. Chapter 858. After buying the recipe, it was automatically matched to the Talisman Pavilion. Jun Changshao tapped on the newly appeared Surge Talisman, and the refinement data appeared. Main materials: 1205 middle 7th grade Spirit Beast Cores, 365 middle 8th grade Spirit Beast Cores, 211 middle 9th grade Spirit Beast Cores. Supplementary materials: 1 Martial King Dan. That's right. Jun Changshao said with satisfaction, "Now this is scientific." Martial King Dan had the effect of increasing one's cultivation level, and the Surge Talisman also had the effect of temporarily increasing one's cultivation level. Using the former as a supplementary material was completely acceptable. Unlike the Strength Amplification Talisman that required Healing Pill, and the Insight Talisman that required Body Shaping Pill. 8 poles have nothing to do with each other, it's really ridiculous. The system said, "Shouldn't the host's concern be that Martial King Dan is more precious and harder to refine than Healing Pill and Body Shaping Pill?" Jun Changshao's expression froze for a moment before it gradually collapsed. What the hell? Refining a Surge Talisman required a Martial King Dan. The system was speechless. This reflex arc: to temporarily increase one's cultivation level, one must consume a Martial King Dan, which meant that a disciple of the sect would not be able to become a Martial King in the shortest time possible. There were enough materials for Healing Pill and other pills, so they could be mass-produced. But Martial King Dan had been out of stock ever since they were respawned, and there were still many disciples waiting in line to use them. If they were used to refined talismans, it would definitely be painful. Are you kidding me? Jun Changshao held his head and collapsed. This is too much of a scam. Now, he really wanted to use detoxification pills and high-grade chi-gathering pills as supplementary materials without any scientific basis. The Surge Talisman was a good thing. Its use was not only to increase one's cultivation level in a short period of time, but also to increase one's cultivation level. To be exact, The increase in one's cultivation level would bring a brand new understanding of martial arts, which was the biggest feature of the Surge Talisman. It was a huge amount of wealth that could not be measured by money or resources. However, the fact that it required Martial King Dan to refine it made Jun Changshao feel a bit depressed, and a bit hard to accept. The system said, "It's better than nothing, don't be too depressed." Not to mention, Elder Wei and the others are still planting Martial King Dan materials, sooner or later it will reach saturation point. To be able to comfort the host like this, after a long time of contact, there were still sincere feelings. "You're right." Jun Changshao was relieved. "Now we just need to wait for the new batch of materials to mature, then use the Martial Emperor pills to refine the Surge Talisman." He didn't lack crystal cores, but he lacked auxiliary materials. Patriarch Ningdu woke up and reported, "It's time to recruit disciples again. Are there any special instructions?" "No." Jun Changshao said, "Just do it as usual." "Understood." A few days later, the Sect of All Times' daily disciple recruitment began. Due to the continuous rise in his reputation, the number of youths who came from all over the world to register each month was maintained at a few thousand, but those who actually passed were few and far between. Gradually, the difficulty of joining the Sect of All Times spread throughout the Starfall continent. Jun Changshao was not lacking in disciples at the moment, so he would rather go without than have too many. As for the Sect's monthly strength assessment, the Disciples' minor competition every 3 months, and the Disciples' grand competition every year, although they were never mentioned in the text, they were also held at a fixed time. Other than the grand competition every year to determine whether a disciple would be promoted to inner or outer disciple, Jun Changshao generally did not participate in other tests. As the Sect's scale grew larger, it had to be tested on its ability to operate on its own. If the Patriarch made the decision on any trivial matters, wouldn't raising a group of elders be akin to freeloaders? Of course. This had something to do with Jun Changshao's deliberate intention. Because while he was completing the main mission, he was also carrying out another mission. One day, he would be a hands-off shopkeeper, let go of fame and fortune, and travel the Jianghu hand in hand with his true love, living a life that only envied Mandarin ducks and not immortals. Every time he thought of this, the system would very timely pour cold water on him and say, "With your attributes that are even more amazing than a spiritual cat, it's impossible for you to achieve this in your lifetime." "What do you know?" Jun Changshao said, "I'm just putting my thoughts on the sect." When the bomb was defused that day, it was definitely at the level of Elder Wei. After the disciple recruitment, the Sect of All Times once again entered a relatively peaceful phase. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others successively received large amounts of natural spirit stones and focused their attention on cultivation. The Patriarch said, if they broke through to the peak of Martial King in half a year, they would be brought to the dimensional battlefield. A place that could injure the Patriarch and make him unconscious would definitely be full of excitement, so it greatly stimulated everyone's desire to break through faster. With Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others' high-level spirit roots, as long as they were given enough resources, breaking through small levels was very stable. In the next few months, one after another, disciples broke through and advanced all the way to the peak of Martial King. Of course, the first to reach this level was naturally Pei Aniu, who had scattered the stars and scattered the clouds and the sun and moon. This won't do. Inside the space-time secret realm, Yi Xingqian said rather irritably, it's impossible to break through Wu Huang in 3 months. He had experience. But there was not enough time. If Jun Changshao delayed for a few more months, then there would be no problem. It could not be delayed. The system reminded the host every day not to forget that he was suppressed by an Earth rank expert, so the closer it was to the end of the epic mission, the stronger the desire for revenge. Patriarch. One day, Elder Wei came to see him and said, the new batch of medicinal ingredients has matured. Hurry up and bring it over. When the medicinal ingredients for refining the Martial King pill were stored in the space ring, Jun Changshao directly refined it with one click. Ding! The first pill was refined. He opened the talisman pavilion again and pressed the confirmation button to refine the Surge Talisman. About an hour later, the warm surge talisman was refined. Jun Changshao held it in his hand and thought to himself, can I use this thing? The introduction said that it could only be used when one reached the highest level of a certain realm. He was now a peak martial emperor, so theoretically, he met the requirements. However, there were 2 epic missions. If he crushed it and his realm did not increase, then it would be terrible. Let's try it. Paw! Jun Changshao decisively crushed it, but there was no reaction at all. Thus, he squatted on the ground with his head in his hands. He wanted to cry but had no tears. A martial king pill. So many crystal cores were wasted just like that. Am I fucking cheap? Ding! At this time, another martial king pill was produced. Jun Changshao continued to refine and called Yixingchen over. You broke through the peak of martial king? Yes. It just so happens that I have a talisman that can temporarily increase one's realm. Give it a try. Jun Changshao handed over the surge talisman. Temporarily increase one's realm? Yixingchen crushed the talisman with surprise and shock. The spiritual energy in his Dantian spirit core immediately began to transform, and his realm also advanced from peak martial king to Wu Huang. This, Yanyo was dumbstruck, standing in place. It was not strange to advance to Wu Huang, but the whole process made him feel the same as when he advanced to martial emperor. Magical. Unbelievable. Pei Xingchen gradually calmed down and said in his heart, this talisman that can instantly increase one's realm must have come from the upper realm. Upper realm? No, it didn't, don't talk nonsense. Oh, right. Jun Changshao reminded him, the talisman's effect lasts for 2 hours. After it disappears, your realm will also drop from its original level for 2 hours. When the time limit was up, Yixingchen's realm dropped from Wu Huang to peak Wu Zone. It felt as if he had fallen from the sky into a bottomless abyss. The most tragic was Jun Changshao, who had fallen from peak martial emperor to peak martial king. He then lay on the chair and said helplessly, you didn't give me the enhancement effect, but you gave me the side effects. Chapter 859. After Yixingchen's test, the surge talisman indeed had the ability to increase one's realm. Moreover, after breaking through, there would be a similar feeling of increasing one's realm, which would undoubtedly bring great benefits to the user. In short, the surge talisman's increase in strength was secondary, the most important thing was to experience the process of breaking through. Although it didn't immediately help the warrior break through, with the experience of someone who had experienced it, the comprehension and time would be greatly reduced. Not bad. Jun Changshao was very satisfied. With the surge talisman, there was no need to deliberately chase after the Wu Huang pills, after all, there might not be any. However, because it required martial king pills as materials, it was destined that it couldn't be mass-produced for the time being. Let's refine 100 pills first. After a few hundred martial king pills were refined, Jun Changshao selected 100 pills to begin production. As for the unused martial king pills, he left them for the disciples to use to break through to the king level. The sect of all times' martial king level was steadily increasing every month, even the first-rate sects couldn't compare. To be able to cheat to such an extent, it was truly insane. After he finished, Jun Patriarch habitually clicked on the epic mission, which showed that there were still 3 months left until the end of the mission. Soon. Who should I bring into the dimensional battlefield? Old Ding and Jiangya, the sect's upper echelons, would definitely be there. Zidan and Bai Qiu would also follow. What made Jun Changshao hesitant was whether to bring Li Qingyang and the others. After the epic mission was completed, they might not be able to break through to Wu Huang, but they might be able to sneak in with the surge talisman, but they could only stay there for 2 hours. If something happens and we can't return before the time limit ends, it will definitely be dangerous. Jun Changshao tapped his finger on the table and said, we have to think about it carefully. He decided to let the disciples decide whether to go or not, so he called Li Qingyang and the others over. Patriarch. Xiao Ziji was the first to make his choice, his eyes were firm, disciple is willing. Disciple is willing. Li Qingyang, Li Fei, Tian Qi, and the others all expressed their opinions. Obviously, in their pursuit of excitement, they could ignore all dangers. Jun Changshao said, "In that case, let's break through to the peak of Martial King in 3 months." Yes! Everyone shouted in unison. After that, they cultivated even harder. Patriarch. One day, Li Luoqiu walked in and said, "Little Mo sent a message. 10 days later, she will go to the Yunling Mountains with the outer disciples to train." The Yunling Mountains are Taishan Shengzong's exclusive training grounds. There are many ferocious beasts there. Every year, the outer court disciples are organized to engage in actual combat. Whoever kills the most ferocious beasts within a set period of time will be rewarded handsomely. Jun Changshao rubbed his chin and said, "This is a good opportunity for little Mo to be promoted. Inform Hall Master Z and ask him to bring some members to the Yunling Mountains." Yes. Li Luoqiu left. Not long after, Hall Master Z led his subordinates to the Yunling Mountains. Jun Changshao only gave one task, which was to create opportunities for Su Xiaoma as much as possible and provide a stage for him to shine in the outer court training. If he relied on himself to climb up, it would definitely take time. If he helped him at a critical moment, he would definitely climb faster. In the forest, 500 outer court disciples of Taishan Shengzong were led by an elder of Wu Huang's level to the Yunling Mountains. Their eyes flashed with excitement, nervousness, and other emotions. Every year, the sect would hold an actual combat training. If they performed well, not only would they be rewarded, but they would also be awarded merit points. As long as they had enough merit points, they could enter the inner court from the outer court. The easiest way for an outer court disciple of Taishan Shengzong to enter the inner court was to obtain excellent results in the annual sect competition. Those outer court disciples who were diligent and hardworking but were not very talented could enter the inner court by accumulating merit points. Junior brother Su. On the way, a fair-skinned man said proudly, "Although the Yunling Mountains are dangerous, as long as you follow me, I guarantee that you will be safe." Su Xiaoma smiled and said, "Thank you for your guidance, senior brother Sunday." He muttered in his heart, "It's just a Wuzong. Does he really think that he's strong?" As a martial king, he relied on the hidden cultivation technique to suppress his cultivation level to that of a martial master. It was a little unfair for him to hang around with low-level outer court disciples all day. He had no choice. In order to complete the task given to him by the patriarch, Su Xiaoma had to be a spy to the end. "Rest here." Not long after, the leading elder shouted, "Junior brother Su." Sun Yingquan waved his hand and said, "Come and massage senior brother Su's shoulders." "Okay." Su Xiaoma ran over with a smile and then skillfully massaged his shoulders. He smiled and said, "Senior brother Sun, is my strength okay?" "Yes." Sun Yingquan closed his eyes and said, "Not bad." If it was Night Emperor doing this, he would be able to shatter his shoulder blades with a punch. Therefore, someone like Su Xiaoma, who was smooth and slick in dealing with people and was able to lower herself, was practically born to be a spy. "Yingquan." The leading elder's face darkened as he said in a low voice, "You are here to gain experience, not to enjoy." "Father." Sun Yingquan smiled and said, "Just for a while." Sigh. Elder Sun shook his head, then glanced at Su Xiaoma and said, "After returning to the sect, you can go to the Spirit Qi Array to cultivate for 3 days. The Spirit Qi Array was a place to cultivate in Taishan Shengzong. The Spirit Qi inside was several times higher than the outside world. Although it was far inferior to the Spirit Gathering Array of the sect of all times, it was a holy land in the eyes of the outer court disciples. They would do anything to get in. "Thank you, Elder Sun." Su Xiaoma was overjoyed and pounded even harder. As expected. My strategy is right. As long as I serve Sun Yingquan well, I will naturally be valued by Elder Sunday. While thinking, he looked at the beautiful girl sitting on a huge rock in the distance and thought to himself, "She is Elder Xia's granddaughter. I have to find a chance to interact with her." Su Xiaoma's way of climbing up was to build a good relationship with all the disciples who were related to the Taishan Shengzong. Let's go, let's hurry. The Taishan Shengzong disciples rested for a while before continuing to the Yunling Mountains. At this time, Hall Master Z had already rushed over with his subordinates. Elder Nyo. What should we do? He was good at taking off his clothes and fighting, but finding a way to provide a stage for Su Xiaoma to show off was a bit of a test of his intelligence. Elder Nyo said, the patriarch said that we only need to create some trouble for the Taishan Shengzong. When necessary, I can transform into my physical form to bully them. That works too. The Purple King said, it's decided then. King. The target is here. Hide well. Don't be discovered. Swish. Swish. All the experts of the Spirit Beast Hall went into hiding. Elder Sun didn't expect so many powerful spirit beasts to be hidden in the Yunling Mountains. He walked in with his disciples and said with his hands behind his back, this training will last for 5 days. You can group up or act alone. When the time is up, gather here. Yes. All the disciples shouted in unison. Training begins. When Elder Sun shouted this sentence, the 500 disciples immediately scattered. Some entered the depths of the mountains alone, while others formed groups of 3 to 5. Chapter 860. Junior Brother Su. Sun Yingquan shook his head, clenched his fist, and said, let's go, senior brother will take you to kill some beasts. Su Xiaoma followed behind, not forgetting to flatter, I heard that senior brother Sun has already comprehended the 12 moves of the chrysanthemum sword technique to the great accomplishment stage. I wonder if junior brother will have the honor of witnessing it today. Yes. Sun Yingquan said proudly. Sister Xia. Su Xiaoma waved his hand and smiled, do you want to team up? Not interested. Xia Shuai said indifferently and left without paying any attention to the two of them. Sun Yingquan rolled his eyes at the woman and said, she's always so cold, as if everyone owes her money. Senior brother Sunday, Su Xiaoma scratched his head and said, Sister Xia has the minor ice sky physique, so it's understandable that she's cold. Humph. Sun Yingquan curled his lips and said, back then, that person also had the Taishan ice heart physique, but I didn't see her this cold. That person? Who? Su Xiaoma asked. Sun Yingquan tilted his head and whispered, it's Lu Chanshan who was expelled. The higher-ups ordered us not to talk about her, so don't talk nonsense. Understood, understood. Su Xiaoma hurriedly nodded and said in his heart, so senior sister has such a strong physique, no wonder she wasn't interested in ancient physiques in the suicide tower. During this period of undercover, he had already understood a lot of things. Taishan Shengzong started with the remnants of the Taishan ice heart technique left behind by the Taishan elders. Although the martial path had blossomed everywhere, she still mainly cultivated the ice element. If a disciple had an ice element physique, no matter what level they were at, they would be heavily nurtured. For example, Xia Shuyan. Although her grandfather was an elder, she also had the minor ice sky physique, so her outer disciple status was only temporary. When her strength increased, she would be an inner disciple or even a direct disciple. Senior brother Sunday, Su Xiaoma asked tentatively, Taishuan's ice heart physique is one of the strongest physiques in the ice element. Since Lu Chanshan has such a strong physique, how could she be expelled? I broke the precepts, Sun Yingquan said. Oh. Su Xiaoma didn't want to get to the bottom of the matter. He was afraid that he would be suspicious if he asked too much. Roar! At this moment, the roar of a fierce beast could be heard. A huge tiger beast stood in front of him, its eyes emitting a strong ruthless aura. Junior brother Su. Sun Yingquan took out his 3-foot green sword and said proudly, today, senior brother will show you the 12 paths of the chrysanthemum sword technique. All right. Su Xiaoma hurriedly stepped aside, although he appeared to be looking forward to it. However, he quietly released his psychic senses and captured Xia Shuiyun, who was gradually moving away from him. He thought to himself, I wonder if the patriarch has sent anyone over. Kid. Suddenly, the Purple King's voice sounded in his ear, I'm here. Do you want this kid to die or cripple him? Su Xiaoma's mouth twitched slightly. It was just an outer sect experience. How could he kill him? Besides, he was following him. If he died, he would lose his promotion. He might even be unlucky. Hall Master Z. Su Xiaoma said telepathically, let's wait and see. Okay. Chrysanthemum bloom. Chrysanthemum dance. Sun Yingquan shook out the 12 paths of the chrysanthemum sword technique. Sword shadows appeared all over the sky. Although the moves were very fancy, in terms of level, it was actually just a so-so. Pucci. Pucci. The tiger beast blocking the way was only at the level of a martial disciple. It was quickly killed. Su Xiaoma stood at the side and praised, Senior Brother Sun's sword technique is exquisite. It's really amazing. Swoosh. Sun Yingquan sheathed his sword and said proudly, it's just a warm-up. Su Xiaoma smiled and said, with Senior Brother Sun's superb sword technique and strength, you will definitely be able to take the first place in this Yunling mountain range experience. Of course. Sun Yingquan waved his hand and said, let's go. The Purple King, who was hiding in the dark, saw that this kid had killed his own kind and was still so arrogant. He almost couldn't help but rush out and slap him into meat paste on the spot. Calm down, calm down. In order to not reduce the number of beast pills next month, he had to complete the mission that Guy gave him and smoothly cooperate with Su Xiaoma's performance. Roar! Boom boom boom. In the depths of the Yunling mountain range, the 500 outer sect disciples had already started 5 days of actual combat experience. Fighting scenes and killing ferocious beasts could be seen everywhere. These ferocious beasts were not the Purple King's subordinates, but they were still of the same kind. Seeing them die one after another, their eyes became redder and redder. Patriarch. In the sect of all times, Li Qingyang was a little worried and said, Hall Master Z is from the beast race after all. The Taishian Xingzong's outer sect training this time is mainly to kill ferocious beasts. I'm afraid that things will go wrong. Jun Changshao said, that shouldn't be the case, right? Something happened. Li Luoqiu hurriedly walked in and said, Hall Master Z brought Elder Niu to cause trouble in the Yunling mountain range. The Taishian Xingzong disciples participating in the training have suffered heavy casualties. Swoosh! Jun Changshao stood up and said, this guy really dares to cause trouble. It was more than just causing trouble. It was as messy as the sky. At this moment, in the depths of the Yunling mountain range, tens of thousands of ferocious beasts surrounded the Taishian Xingzong disciples with red eyes. Ta! Elder Niu walked out and said coldly, you dare to kill my people? All of you must die. In the crowd, Su Xiaoma supported the injured Sun Yingquan with one hand and roared in his heart, Patriarch, what kind of actors did you hire? They're completely unprofessional. In the plan, he would let Hall Master Z make a move when necessary and create some trouble for the Taishian Xingzong disciples. At the crucial moment, he would rush over and sacrifice himself to win the favor of his fellow disciples and elders. In the end, trouble was coming. However, Hall Master Z directly gathered tens of thousands of ferocious beasts in the mountain range and launched a beast-tide attack. What was even more devastating was that Elder Sun was even injured and ran away. More than half of the 500 disciples were dead or injured, and they were surrounded by so many ferocious beasts. The situation was critical. If he stood out now and used his body to block the danger, it would definitely be unreasonable. Kid. The Purple King transmitted his voice, I've created a chance for you to act cool. You can come out and perform now. Perform your sister. Tens of thousands of ferocious beasts, do you want me to chase them all away with my martial master cultivation? It's over, it's over. We're all going to die here. Despair appeared in the eyes of many Taishian Xingzong disciples. If there were only a few hundred ferocious beasts, they could still fight against them. Facing tens of thousands of them, and a few spirit beasts that were stronger than the elders, they would definitely die today. Wah! Sun Inquan spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face became paler. This kid was punched by Elder Nyo. Although he did not die, he was already seriously injured. Don't panic, don't panic. Su Xiaoma pretended to be calm and said, the sect will definitely send someone to save us. Save? Elder Nyo smiled sinisterly and said, I've said it before, all of you will die today. As he spoke, he waved his hand and grabbed a trembling Taishan Shengzong disciple. He said coldly, you killed 7 of my clan members. Death. No, bang. Elder Nyo squeezed his hand, and the disciple directly shattered. Su Xiaoma roared in his heart, if you kill him like this, how can I save him? Next. Elder Nyo glanced at the Taishan Shengzong disciples and smiled coldly, whose turn is it now? Ta! Su Xiaoma clenched his fists and walked out. His legs pretended to tremble and said, If you want to kill me. Don't hurt my senior brother. Although this group of actors did not follow the script, he had to change the plot into the plan. Needless to say, Xia Shuiyun, who was in the crowd, looked at him with a strange look in her eyes. She said to herself, is he not afraid of death? Elder Nyo raised his hand and said coldly, a piece of trash that isn't even from Wuzong. Killing you will only dirty my hands. Bang! A slap landed on his face. Su Xiaoma immediately flew out and crashed into a huge rock. Wah! He pretended to be injured and vomited blood, but in his heart, he collapsed and said, Patriarch, there is a group of unqualified actors. I can't continue this show. Chapter 861. Jun Changshao wanted to provide Su Xiaoma with a platform to show off. He wanted to shine in the Taishan Shengzong outer sect disciples' training and be recognized by the higher-ups. In fact, Su Xiaoma had a whole set of plans. First of all, he pretended to be a martial master in the Taishan Shengzong. It was unrealistic to be the best in the Yunling Mountains, so he decided to take the tragic route. What was the tragic route? It was to deliberately create trouble for Sun Inquan and Xia Shuiyun. At the critical moment, he would step forward to take the damage for them and pretend to be seriously injured. The plan was perfect, but the reality was cruel. The Purple King lost control of his emotions when he saw his clan members being killed. He directly gathered tens of thousands of beasts and formed a beast tide to attack the outer sect disciples of the Taishan Shengzong. At this time, Su Xiaoma definitely could not step forward. After all, he was only a martial master. If he could survive the beast tide, he would definitely be doubted. However, what was more desperate was that Elder Nyo's original body appeared and beat up Elder Sunday. Only a group of outer sect disciples were left trembling. In this situation, he might not be able to win even if he used his martial king cultivation. The plan and plot were all messed up. The difficulty level was raised by n levels. Su Xiaoma could not act at all. Saying that Hallmaster Z and Elder Nyo were not qualified actors was already mild. It was unpleasant to hear. A group of useless teammates. However, no matter how wrong the plot was, no matter how difficult the play was, he still had to act. Su Xiaoma stood up, his arms hanging down. He said shakily, if you want to kill me. Don't hurt my senior brother. Not only did he have to continue the tragic route, but he also had to find a way to stall for time. As one of the top sects, they should have received the news that the outer sect disciples were attacked by beasts and should have sent reinforcements. Yes. They had received it. However, it would take some time to reach the Yunling Mountains from the sect. Go Sheng, Sun Inquan, who was seriously injured on the ground, was stunned. He did not expect junior brother Su to be so manly in this situation. On the other hand, he and the other disciples were scared out of their wits. Bang! Elder Nyo slapped him again. Boom! Su Xiaoma crashed into the wall and used his spirit energy to force the blood out of his body. He staggered to his feet, and his eyes shone with determination despite his messy hair. Can these 2 palm strikes exchange for my senior brother's 2 lives? Junior brother Su, the outer disciples of Taishan Xingzong were all stunned. Kakik. Old Monster Ox laughed and said, "Kid, you're pretty tough. Alright, let's play a game. Take one of my palms and I'll spare your life." Fortunately, this old man could follow the plot. Otherwise, there would be no way to continue acting. Su Xiaoma took a deep breath. Because he had aggravated his injuries, his face suddenly turned ferocious. Come, every action and action of a qualified spy had to be at the level of an award-winning actor. The Taishan Xingzong disciples had already determined from his superb acting skills that he was struggling to hold on, that he was using his life to stall for time. Boom! Old Monster Ox struck again. Su Xiaoma flew out beautifully and then fell to the ground. One of his legs was twitching slightly. Old Monster Ox thought to himself, his acting is really good. Although it looked like he had used a lot of strength, it was actually just a so-so. Martial disciples wouldn't feel pain. Wah! Su Xiaoma forced out another mouthful of blood and staggered to his feet. Sun Yingquan and Xia Shuiyun were both stunned. After being hit so many times, he was clearly seriously injured. How could he still stand up? Ha! Old Monster Ox said in surprise, "You're a little martial disciple. Seems like I'll have to use more strength." This sentence was to tell the Taishan Xingzong disciples that he didn't want to kill Su Xiaoma. It was to explain why he could take so many hits. Old Monster Ox. Su Xiaoma transmitted his voice, "Hit harder. Break his bones." If he kept standing up like a roly-poly toy, there would definitely be flaws. If he wanted to play, he would play to the limit. Whoosh! Old Monster Ox threw a punch. Bang, crack! The sound of ribs breaking could be heard. Su Xiaoma flew out and fell to the ground with a loud bang. Junior brother Su. Sun Yingquan suppressed his injuries and roared with his fist clenched. At that moment, the Taishan Xingzong disciples' eyes were filled with grief. After all, Go Sheng was trampled by the spirit beast for everyone. Bastard! Sun Yingquan said angrily, if you have the guts, come at me. Don't hurt my junior brother." Although this guy was a little arrogant, at this moment, Su Xiaoma's unyielding performance had stimulated his manhood. As for the other disciples, they also showed an expression of facing death with equanimity. "Don't worry." Old Monster Ox smiled coldly, "It's almost your turn," because Su Xiaoma got up with difficulty and half knelt. One hand was on the ground and the other hand was on his chest. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He said in a voice as soft as a mosquito, I haven't fallen, Old Monster Ox. Come and stomp on him." He could only bet on the Taishan Xingzong's reinforcements. All he could do was to delay as much time as possible. Understood. Old Monster Ox walked over and said coldly, "It seems that I'm too merciful to let you live until now." He lifted his foot and stomped down. Bang! 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 He stomped crazily. Junior brother Su, if Sun Yingquan was not injured, he would have rushed up even if there was a possibility of death. Bang bang bang! Old Monster Ox trampled on Su Xiaoma to his heart's content. The outer disciples of the Taishan Xingzong who were huddled together all stared angrily. Are they still not coming? Although Xia Shuiyun in the crowd still looked cold, she was very anxious in her heart. Whoosh! 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 Suddenly, in the distant sky, hundreds of streamers were flying at an extremely fast speed. The aura in the sky was very strong. Old Monster Ox. The Purple King transmitted his voice, "We can retreat now. Let's go." Swish! 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 In an instant Old Monster Ox and the other spirit beasts retreated. The tens of thousands of ferocious beasts surrounding the outer disciples of the Taishan Shengzong also scattered like birds. As soon as they disappeared, the experts of the Taishan Shengzong landed one after another. These people were all at the Emperor's stage. If they fought with the Purple King, it would be earth-shattering. "Are you all okay?" the middle-aged leader asked. "Elder Shen." Xia Shuiyun hurriedly pointed at Su Xiaoma, who was lying in the distance and covered in bruises, and said, "Junior brother Su is seriously injured. He needs to be treated quickly." "Woman! You're not cold at all." Su Xiaoma fainted with satisfaction. Although the difficulty of the play increased a lot, he made the right bet. The Taishan Shengzong was quite fast in terms of rescue. When Su Xiaoma, who pretended to be unconscious, woke up, he was already in the hospital bed of the Taishan Shengzong. Junior brother Su. Sun Yingquan, whose wrist was bandaged, hurriedly got up and said, "You're finally awake." Senior brother Sun, Su Xiaoma said, What is this place?" Sun Yingquan knew that he was unconscious and didn't know what happened later, so he hurriedly explained. "Is that so? Everyone is safe." Su Xiaoma smiled with difficulty and said, That's great." Sun Yingquan said, "Junior brother Su, you stepped forward in the face of danger and bought time for everyone to prevent more of your fellow disciples from dying. I'm really touched. This is what I should do, cough cough." Su Xiaoma didn't continue because he needed to pretend that he was seriously injured. Life was like a play. It all depended on acting. Sun Yingquan hurriedly said, "Don't talk. Heal your injuries first." Xia Shuiyun appeared in the ward and put a bottle of pills on the table. She said lightly, "This is the Tranquil Heart Ice pill. It can quickly heal injuries." After that, she turned around and left. Sun Yingquan was stunned. The Tranquil Heart Ice pill was a top-grade healing medicine in the sect. It was extremely difficult to obtain, but this woman actually took out a bottle. In the main hall, more than 10 elders of the Taishan Shengzong were talking. The topic was, why did an emperor-level spirit beast appear in the periphery of the Yunling Mountains? Why did a group of ferocious beasts riot? Elder Shen guessed, the altar sent a message earlier that the Purple King has been unsealed. Could it be that guy's doing? It's possible. It seems that if we don't find that monster as soon as possible, it will be a threat to the Taishan Shengzong and the entire continent. We have to find it, but it's the altar's business. We don't have to force ourselves. Is the disciple named Gosheng all right? Although he was seriously injured, he was treated in time. He is now out of danger. In a life-and-death situation, he still stood up for his fellow disciples and stalled for time. This courage is precious. I think it must be rewarded. Elder Sun said. Elder Xia next to him said, "Shuiyun told me what happened." At that time, all the outer disciples were scared. Only he dared to stand up. He should be used as an example. Since the two of them could help Su Gosheng, it meant that the trick of injuring oneself was not in vain. At least, they had won the favor of the two elders. The third elder, who was more authoritative, was silent for a while and said, "This time, the training was interrupted because of a group of beasts. Su Gosheng is the winner. He will be rewarded with 500 merit points." No one had any objection. If it weren't for Su Gosheng risking his life and successfully stalling for time, hundreds of disciples would have been killed. He deserved the merit points. Junior brother Su. Sun Yingquan came to the ward and said excitedly, "In view of your performance in the Yunling Mountains, the elders have discussed and decided to reward you with 500 merit points." Su Xiaoma was stunned. In the plan, he didn't fight for anything in this training in the Yunling Mountains. He only needed to play the role of a tragic character and win the favor of two disciples with elders backing them. He didn't expect to receive such a high amount of merit points. He was rewarded because of the Purple King. However, that guy was now standing with Elder Nyo in the Spirit Beast Hall, being reprimanded by June Patriarch. "Two elders. I asked you to help Su Xiaoma act cool and give him a chance to shine. I didn't ask you to attack the group of beasts. I didn't ask you to act cool. The Taishan Shengzong sent so many Emperor stage experts to help. If there was a mistake and your identity as a disciple was exposed, you wouldn't be able to escape the blame even if you died 10,000 times. The Purple King whispered, "It can't be that serious, right?" Swish! Jun Changshao sat down and drank a cup of tea. He said, "If you don't handle the matter well, 2 of your meals will be reduced this month. Your mid-grade beast cores will be halved." Ah! Chapter 862. After the Yunling Mountain incident, Su Xiaoma received the approval of the elders. After all, it was rare for someone to risk his life for a fellow disciple. At first, Sun Yingquan only saw him as a follower. Now, he saw him as a good brother. This was, after recovering from his injuries, he took the initiative to call Su Xiaoma over and secretly gave him the secret manual. "Junior brother, this is the 12 chrysanthemum swordsmanship. Take it and cultivate. Don't tell anyone that I gave it to you." "Thank you, senior brother Sun." Sun Yingquan said with a straight face, "You're treating me like an outsider." "Ah." Su Xiaoma grinned. "I took on an easier mission. Let's complete it together tomorrow." "Okay." Sun Yingquan was not the only one who changed his attitude toward Su Xiaoma. The other disciples would greet him warmly when they saw him from afar. In the past, they pretended not to see him. Su Xiaoma was a good person in the eyes of the elders. However, in the eyes of many disciples, he was a little cunning. Therefore, he was not liked. After the Yunling Mountain incident, they realized that this fellow disciple had courage and backbone. Naturally, they accepted him. Although Hall Master Z and the others don't know how to act, everything is still according to plan. Su Xiaoma thought to himself on the way to the cafeteria. For now, he had successfully gained a foothold in the outer sect. As long as he slowly released his talent and strength, it should not be a problem for him to become an inner sect disciple. In a large sect like Taishan Shengzong, flattery could only accumulate limited connections. If he wanted to achieve a meteoric rise, he had to rely on his own strength. I can't take too big a step to avoid the suspicion of the higher-ups. Sigh. Su Xiaoma rubbed his temples and thought to himself, I have a long way to go. Hey! Suddenly, he heard a voice. Su Xiaoma turned around and saw Xia Shuiyun leaning against a tree. She said calmly, "Have you recovered from your injuries?" This girl was about 18 or 19 years old. Although she was not devastatingly beautiful, she was very pleasing to the eye. However, there was a cold air on her face, as if she was 1,000 miles away. When a girl with a cold personality takes the initiative to talk to you, it means that she has let her guard down around you. Elder Wei's words sounded in Su Xiaoma's ears. Then how should I interact with her? When facing such a girl, you must not pester her, because it will backfire. You should deliberately keep a distance from her, and then wait and see what happens. You should adapt to the situation by sticking to the status quo. Su Xiaoma carefully thought about what Old Man Wei had said before. She cupped her hands and said, "Thank you, senior sister, for the tranquil heart and icy skin pill." Xia Shuai said indifferently, "Sun Yingquan's thoughts are not on the martial path. Following him will only delay your future." With that, he turned around and left. Su Xiaoma thought to himself, I want to follow you, but you don't care about me. He didn't care about the relationship between men and women, but that his grandfather was an elder, which was beneficial to him in Taishan Shengzong. Go Sheng. Sun Yingquan appeared behind him and put his hand on his shoulder. I saw Xia Shuiyun talking to you just now. Su Xiaoma said, she asked about my injuries. Tisk. Sun Yingquan said, this cold woman actually knows how to care about junior brother. It's a bit unusual. Could it be? He paused and said, she's interested in you. Senior brother Sun, don't joke around. Su Xiaoma said, I'm from a humble background, and my aptitude isn't high. How could I be liked by a proud girl like Sister Xia? Don't look down on yourself too much. Sun Yingquan patted his shoulder and said, "Come, let's go eat." The Taishan Shengzong cafeteria was bigger and bigger than the Sect of all times. However, the taste of the food was not to Su Xiaoma's taste. Every time he ate, it was like swallowing rice grains, but he still had to pretend that it was delicious. I miss Dudu's cooking. Su Xiaoma sat down listlessly with the food in her hands. Just as he was about to eat, he suddenly felt a chill. He saw Xia Shuiyun sitting in front of him. "Hey!" Sun Yingquan walked over with the food and said, "This is my seat. Why are you sitting here?" "It's my pleasure." Xia Shuiyun said lightly. "You, forget it. A good man doesn't fight with a woman." Sun Yingquan sat in another seat and muttered in his heart, "She always eats alone. Why is she sitting in front of Gosheng today?" When facing such a girl, you must not pester her, because it will backfire. Deliberately keep a distance, and then wait and see. Adapt to the situation by sticking to the status quo. Su Xiaoma was still thinking about Elder Wei's words, so he lowered his head and ate. He did not look at Xia Shuiyun and did not say a word to her. "Elder Wei. How did the situation change?" "I accepted a mission. Let's do it together after dinner," Xia Shuiyun said. Sun Yingquan, who was drinking soup, almost choked. Did he hear wrongly? The woman who had always been isolated from the world actually took the initiative to ask Gosheng for a mission. Su Xiaoma scratched his head and said, "Sister Xia, I have an appointment with senior brother Sunday. After dinner, we will go to the spirit array to cultivate, so, you must go," Xia Shuiyun said. This, Su Xiaoma looked at Sun Yingquan, who said, "Sister Xia rarely asks for help. You have to give her some face." Was she asking for help? She was ordering him. "Okay." Su Xiaoma said, "I will go after dinner." With that said, he picked up his chopsticks and started eating. Xia Shuiyun said indifferently, "When you scratched your head just now, your dandruff fell into the bowl." Su Xiaoma's expression became interesting. "In Mountain Ridge. A very evil place." At this moment, Su Xiaoma was walking in front, and Xia Shuiyun was walking behind. The two did not talk and kept a certain distance. "Senior sister." After walking for a while, Su Xiaoma finally could not help but ask, "What mission are we doing?" "Destroy the Wind Wolf King." "Ha!" Su Xiaoma widened his eyes and said, "This is a beast comparable to Peak Wuzong. I can't beat it. You just need to lure the wolves away." "Leave it to me," Xia Shuiyun said. Su Xiaoma rolled his eyes. This woman called him over to do the mission with her to lure the target. "Awo! Awo!" At this moment, wolf howls could be heard from the dark forest. Thud thud thud. One by one, Wind wolves with strength of lower rank 9 walked out. Their eyes were cold. "Go!" Xia Shuiyun said, "Lure them away." Although Su Xiaoma was on the verge of breaking down, he could only brace himself and walk forward. He taunted the wolf beasts, "A bunch of fleas, come and catch me." "Awo! Awo!" Hundreds of wolf beasts rushed over in a frenzy. "Oh my God!" Su Xiaoma hurriedly ran away. Although he was trying very hard to suppress it, his short legs were still quite fast when he took a step. Clang! At this moment, Xia Shuiyun took out her 3-foot-long sword. She used a mysterious movement technique and blended into the darkness, looking for the Wind Wolf King that was hiding. This woman is too reckless. Su Xiaoma, who was walking with a group of wolf beasts, was speechless. His spiritual senses had already penetrated deep into the forest. He found that there was not only the Wind Wolf King, but also a few high-level wolf beasts comparable to Wuzong. It was easy to go in, but difficult to come out. Chapter 863. As expected, Xia Shuiyun entered the depths of the forest and saw that there were 4 other beasts in addition to the Wolf King. She immediately realized that the situation was not good. She wanted to retreat. But as soon as the thought arose, she was surrounded. One wolf king is not easy to deal with, let alone 4 helpers. Su Xiaoma thought, this woman is in big trouble. Should I save her? Forget it, I'll just wait and see. Su Xiaoma withdrew his thoughts and continued to drag hundreds of wolf beasts around the forest. For the sake of acting, he gave up the dignity of a martial king. He would rather appear weak and be chased by a group of trash beasts comparable to martial disciples. Boom! Boom! The sound of fighting came from the depths of the forest, and a cold and gloomy air filled the air. Xia Shuiyan fought with a few powerful spirit beasts, but because there were too many of them and her strength was not overwhelming, she soon fell into a passive position. This was within Su Xiaoma's expectations. In the current situation, even if a few more disciples came, it would be difficult to deal with, let alone her. I was careless. I have to think of a way to retreat quickly. Xia Shuiyan fought with a few beasts while thinking of a way to escape. However, the evil Wind Wolf King had seen through her thoughts. It raised its head and growled, and 2 of its subordinates blocked the way. Damn it! Xia Shuiyan could only fight passively. Poochie! After a while, the evil Wind Wolf King's sharp claws scratched her arm. Su Xiaoma, who was wandering outside, had been paying attention to the inside. Seeing that the woman was injured, he thought, if I don't save her, she will definitely die here. How to save her? This was a big problem. Poochie! Poochie! Blood splattered and poured on the ground. Xia Shuiyan's back was scratched a few more times by the evil Wind Wolf King. The current situation was extremely unfavorable for her. Sigh. Su Xiaoma stopped and began to gather spiritual power in his palm. Xia Shuiyan was Elder Xia's granddaughter. Being on good terms with her would help his promotion in the future. He couldn't let her die here, and he couldn't save her directly, so he could only sneak here. Sigh. Troublesome woman. Su Xiaoma waved his hand, and his spirit energy gathered into the shape of a needle. With his strength as a martial king, he could easily take the head of the external Wind Wolf King, which was several hundred feet long, without making a sound. However, right when Su Xiaoma was about to make a move, Xia Shuiyan, who'd originally fallen into a dangerous situation, had a resolute expression in her eyes, and a gurgling cold current erupted from her body and swiftly spread towards the surroundings. Icebound 1,000 miles. Huff huff, the cold air swept along with the wind, and everywhere it passed, a layer of ice formed on the grass and trees. Caw caw caw. Caw caw caw, the evil Wind Wolf King and the other 4 wolf beasts weren't spared either. They were frozen by the cold air, and turned into 5 lifelike ice sculptures. TSK TSK. Su Xiaoma dispersed his spiritual energy and said in surprise, so, this woman still has a trump card. However, it seems like I'm barely using it. I'm afraid it's already, poo. Xia Shuiyan spat out a mouthful of blood. Her entire face turned extremely pale, as if she'd been severely injured. The duration of the ice seal was limited, so she didn't have time to catch her breath. Suppressing her body that was suffering from the backlash, she hurriedly walked out. I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. As soon as she walked out, she saw Su Xiaoma running wildly with his tongue out and howling. Let's go! Xia Shuiyan shouted. After saying that, she took the lead to walk out. However, she had only taken 2 steps when she almost fell to the ground due to her injuries. Sister Xia! Su Xiaoma ran over with sweat all over his forehead, and said, You're injured. As soon as he finished speaking, he directly picked up Xia Shuiyan and ran out while screaming. Huff! 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 On the ancient road outside the mountain ridge, Su Xiaoma stopped and panted rapidly. His legs were so tired that they were trembling violently. What a good actor! Are you done hugging? Xia Shuiyan said coldly. Su Xiaoma hurriedly put her down and stuttered as he explained, Xia. Sister Xia, It was a dangerous situation. I know, don't say any more, Xia Shuiyan said weakly. Su Xiaoma hurriedly shut his mouth. Awo! Awo! At this moment, the howls of the wolf beasts came from the Yin mountain ridge again, as if they were about to catch up. Xia Shuiyan frowned and said, "Let's go." Okay. Su Xiaoma took to her heels and ran, leaving him on the spot. This guy, Xia Shuiyan bit her lip and said with difficulty, "Come back, bring me along." Oh. Su Xiaoma hurriedly turned back, then pulled her hand and ran forward. As a result, his injuries aggravated and he spat out blood. Ah! Sister Xia, you're spitting blood. Don't talk nonsense, quickly carry me and run. Okay. Night fell. In a slightly damp cave, Su Xiaoma was roasting a pheasant in front of a bonfire. Xia Shuiyan sat cross-legged in the distance with her eyes closed. Her body was covered in ice, as if she was healing her injuries. After a long time, when the pheasant was cooked, she opened her eyes. Although her face was still pale, her injuries were under control for the time being. Sigh. Xia Shuiyan sighed and said, "If only I had the tranquil heart and icy skin pill." Here. Su Xiaoma handed over a small exquisite bottle. Xia Shuiyan looked at him and said in surprise, "You didn't take it?" "I can't bear to eat such an expensive pill." Su Xiaoma smiled foolishly. Xia Shuiyan took the bottle, then took out the pill and swallowed it. She started to heal her injuries again. Su Xiaoma sat next to her and looked at her with his chin in his hand. He thought to himself, are girls who have ice physique and practice ice attribute all so cold? Suddenly, he released his spiritual thoughts and found that the evil wind wolf king was approaching the cave with the wolf pack. These fleas were really annoying. Swoosh! Swoosh! The evil wind wolf king followed the scent in the air, but when it was more than 10 miles away from the cave, it heard a cold voice, "Go back to the shady mountain ridge." Ga. It hurriedly stopped, and its eyes were filled with shock. Then it immediately ran back to the shady mountain ridge with its tail between its legs. Although it did not see the person, it knew that the person must be very strong. It could not afford to offend him. It definitely could not afford to offend him. The next day, Xia Shuiyan recovered from her injuries with the help of the tranquil heart and icy skin pill, but she could not use her spiritual power for the time being. This was the side effect of using the ice attribute martial arts to seal the wolf beast. Sister Xia. Su Xiaoma ran in from outside and held a lotus leaf filled with water. He smiled and said, "The spring water here is very sweet. Do you want to try it?" "I'm not thirsty," Xia Shuiyan said calmly. Oh. Su Xiaoma raised his head and drank the water. He thought to himself, just like Elder Wei said, "I have to keep my distance from this kind of woman." Yesterday. Xia Shuiyan looked at him, her eyes shining. She said meaningfully, "You run very fast." Su Xiaoma's heart skipped a beat. Although she had been acting all the time, the situation yesterday was a little troublesome. When he carried her out of the shady mountain ridge, he sped up a lot. She was still aware of this when she was heavily injured. As expected, women were as sensitive as needles. Su Xiaoma and Xia Shuiyan looked at each other. A professional spy had to be able to withstand the test of any situation. After a while, he scratched his head and said, "I have no aptitude or talent. I grew up in the mountains, so I can run fast." Xia Shui had been looking at him the entire time. Then, she said with certainty, "You're lying." Chapter 864. You're lying. When Xia Shuiyan said these 4 words, her tone was very certain. Su Xiaoma's heart was in his mouth. Did this cold woman discover something? That shouldn't be the case. He hid it so well. When you were chased by the wolf beast, I could tell that it wasn't because you ran fast, but because you cultivated some kind of movement technique. Xia Shuiyan stared at him suspiciously. The more she was like this, the more Su Xiaoma felt uneasy. I was born poor. How could I cultivate a movement technique? Sister Xia, don't joke around. Born poor. Xia Shuiyan said lightly, this kind of nonsense can only fool the elders who recruited you. Damn. This woman must have discovered something. Could it be that she was suspicious of his identity? What should he do? Kill her? Or destroy the evidence? Xia Shuiyan said lightly, you used a low status to make yourself look lowly. It's just that you don't want to attract the attention of your fellow disciples. Then, you use flattery to climb up. She was right. Sneaking into the Taishan Shengzong was to make himself look lowly and use his connections to climb up. Su Xiaoma, who was still a little hesitant, made a decision in his heart. Moreover, Xia Shuiyan said, you were attacked by spirit beasts in the Yunling Mountains. Although the other party didn't hit you hard, with your martial master cultivation, you couldn't have held on for so long. Su Xiaoma frowned. I wanted to get close to you and become a tool for my promotion. Now, it seems that I can only destroy you. However, the sect knew that they were on a mission. If they didn't return, how could he explain it? Su Xiaoma started to think. Xia Shuiyan said, you're an ambitious person. It's hard for an outer sect disciple to satisfy you. However, you have to understand that becoming an inner sect disciple doesn't depend on shortcuts. It depends on your own strength. Ha! Su Xiaoma was stunned. Did she think that he was someone who deliberately lowered himself for the sake of his ambition and deliberately took advantage of both sides? Sigh. Su Xiaoma shrugged and helplessly said, in the end, we were still discovered. The corners of Xia Shuiyan's mouth curled up slightly, revealing an almost undetectable smile. She seemed to be proud of her ability to see through the other party's ambitions. Su Xiaoma, who was good at reading people's expressions, noticed it and thought to himself, she probably didn't think that she was a spy. I can take this opportunity to fool her. I originally planned to get along with you as an ordinary person, but what I got in return was doubts. Stop pretending. I'll lay my cards on the table. Su Xiaoma sat down, and the simple and honest look on his face disappeared. I've practiced movement techniques before, and I'm deliberately currying favor with senior martial brother Sun and sister Xia. Was the Yunling Mountains intentional? Xia Shuiyan asked. Yes. Su Xiaoma lowered his head and pretended to be depressed. I don't come from a good family. I don't have an ice physique like Sister Xia, and I don't have an elder grandfather. It's as difficult as ascending to heaven to establish a foothold in Taishan Shengzong, so I can only find help from nobles. You're on the right track for now. Xia Shuiyan said, after the Yunling Mountains incident, the elders are very satisfied with you. Su Xiaoma smiled bitterly. Sister Xia, do you know that this satisfaction was exchanged with my life? You're very smart. Xia Shuiyan said, in that situation, you were going to die anyway. It's better to take a gamble and delay time with your life. If you succeed, you'll be valued, but if you fail, you'll still inevitably die. This woman was really not simple. However, it seemed that she had guessed off topic. Su Xiaoma beat her at her own game and grinned. I made the right bet. He could now be sure that this woman only thought that he was bent on climbing up, and did not think that there was a deeper meaning. You're just lucky. If you want to establish a foothold in Taishan Shengzong, you still have to rely on strength, Xia Shuiyan said. Su Xiaoma said, strength also has to be built on resources. If I, Su Xiaoma, can be valued by the higher-ups, even if I have 1/10 of the martial arts resources of Sister Xia and senior brother Sun, I may not be weaker than others. You're so confident. Xia Shuiyan said. Phew, suddenly, Su Xiaoma released his cultivation to the level of Wuzong, and a heavy force filled the cave. He said proudly, when I went down the mountain, Master often taught me that others can look down on me, but I must look up to myself. This should be the only truth he said since he became a spy. Because in terms of relationship, he and Jun Changshao were master and disciple, and the latter did often use this sentence to encourage his disciple. So you've been hiding your cultivation. Xia Shuiyan's tone and eyes did not show the slightest surprise. Sister Xia. Su Xiaoma said with a smile, a straightforward person does not resort to insinuations. You deliberately asked me to do a mission, didn't you just want to test me? Xia Shuiyan looked at him, what's your ambition? Su Xiaoma withdrew his aura and said with a sharp gaze, to become an inner disciple, a core disciple, or even an elder, or even, a master of a sect. Xia Shuiyan was stunned. This guy's ambition was quite big. He actually wanted to be a patriarch. At first, he did not, but now that things had reached this point, Su Xiaoma might as well say it in a big way. Of course. This is not my ambition, but my dream. You can laugh at me, and you can also think that I'm daydreaming, but my dream will never change, because Master once said that a chef who does not want to be a general is not a good tailor. Jun Changshao, that's right, I really did say that. Pfft. Xia Shuiyan was amused by the last sentence. However, she realized that she had lost her image, so she hurriedly put on a stern face and said, dreams are not based on words, but on actions and hard work. I've been working hard. Working hard to flatter the ignorant and incompetent Sun Yingquan, and wasting your time for nothing? I want to flatter Sister Xia, but I'm afraid of delaying your cultivation. Since he had already confessed, there were some things that he did not have to deliberately hide. Rest for 2 days. Xia Shuiyan said, then go to the Yin mountain ridge. That. Before Su Xiaoma could finish, he heard her say, I'll help you keep it a secret. Thank you, senior sister. Su Jintang is your real name? That's right. Who is this master you're talking about? My master is Old Man Jun Tian, he lives in seclusion in the mountains. Old Man Jun Tian. Xia Shuiyan secretly said, I've never heard of this person, he should be a hidden martial cultivator. Phew. Su Xiaoma secretly sighed in relief. Fortunately, this woman had gone off topic, thinking that he was ambitious and was not here to be a spy, otherwise he would have been forced to silence her. A few days later, Xia Shuiyan's injuries recovered, and the two went to the Yin mountain ridge again. Senior sister. Su Xiaoma stopped at the outer area and said in a low voice, I'll be responsible for luring the wolf pack first, then after shaking them off, we'll work together to kill the Yin Wind Wolf King. Okay. Xia Shuiyan said. I'll go first. Su Xiaoma dashed in and lured the pack of wolves out in no time. This time, he lured them quite thoroughly, those beasts comparable to master level were also chasing after him. Shwa! Not long after, Su Xiaoma jumped out from the grass and said, there's not much time, let's finish this quickly. Xia Shuiyan was stunned. Isn't this guy running too fast? Time did not allow her to think carefully, she took out her 3-feet-long sword and rushed into the forest with Su Xiaoma. The Yin Wind Wolf King's strength was not bad, but without help, facing 2 master-level martial artists was destined to be a tragedy. Pucci. After fighting for a while, its head was chopped off. Awo! Awo! Just at this time, the wolf pack that was released by the kite finally rushed back. Let's go! Su Xiaoma picked up Xia Shuiyan, who had put the Wolf King's head into her spatial ring, and jumped up and down a few times, completely disappearing into the dense forest. Hoo-hoo, the cold wind blew by her ear. Xia Shuiyan tried to keep a distance from his chest, frowning slightly, and said in her heart, this guy is taking advantage of me again. Chapter 865. After killing the Wind Wolf King, Su Xiaoma and Xia Shuiyan returned to Taishan Zone. After handing in the task and receiving the reward, Xia Shuiyan gave the elixir and the time card to Su Xiaoma and said, don't ask why, this is what you deserve. Ah! Su Xiaoma accepted all the rewards and said with a silly smile, thank you, senior sister. In front of Xia Shuiyan, he had to pretend to be an ambitious person. In the sect, he still had to pretend to be a lowly and sociable little rascal. Sigh. It really tested his acting skills. In the future, spend less time with Sun Ningquan. Xia Shuiyan said, if there's any task, I'll call you to go with me. Okay. Su Xiaoma nodded. Oh, right. Before Xia Shuiyan left, she stopped and said, the outer disciple assessment will be held soon. I hope you can get good results and let the elders see you in a new light. This. I'll do my best. Su Xiaoma said. Next. He put his mind on cultivation. Because of the merit points and the rewards from the tasks, his frequent appearance in the cultivation place did not arouse the suspicion of his fellow disciples. During this period, Xia Shuiyan also appeared often and took him to do tasks. Su Xiaoma knew that after the incident in the Yin Mountain Ridge, this woman was obviously taking the initiative to help him obtain more martial arts resources. Go Sheng, you've been very close to Xia Shuiyan recently. Do you really have that kind of relationship? On the way to the cafeteria, Sun Ningquan asked in a low voice. Not only him, but many outer disciples were talking about it. After all, Sister Xia, who had always been cold, looked for Su Xiaoma too often. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that something was wrong. What kind of relationship can I have with Sister Xia? We're just doing tasks together. Su Xiaoma quickly denied. He was also quite depressed now. Because Xia Shuiyan's help was too obvious, it was easy to be gossiped about. Moreover, as a beauty, she had no lack of admirers and pursuers in the sect. If he got too close to her, he might get into trouble. As expected. Just as he walked to the cafeteria and was about to get some food, a tall and handsome fellow disciple blocked his path and lightly said, Boy, I advise you to stay away from junior Sister Xia. His name was He Zonging. He was one of the stronger disciples in the outer sect. It was said that he had a high chance of being promoted to the inner sect in the sect's grand competition at the end of the year. There were many outer disciples in Taishan Shengzong, but they were also divided into different groups. Su Xiaoma, Sun Ningquan, and Xia Shuiyan entered the sect later, and belonged to the same batch. The other disciples became outer disciples earlier, and belonged to the previous batch or the batch before that. To put it bluntly, just like in school, there were different grades. If the outer disciples of Taishan Shengzong were compared to junior high school, then Su Xiaoma was in his first year of junior high school. He Zonging became an outer disciple earlier, so he could be considered in his third year of high school. The one with the surname He. Sun Ningquan walked over and raised his head. Who are you trying to scare? He Zonging did not care about elder Sun's son. He only lightly glanced at Su Xiaoma, then turned and left. Senior brother He has been admiring junior sister Xia for a long time. Junior brother Su and junior sister Xia have been a bit close recently. It's only a matter of time before something happens. In the cafeteria, the outer disciples discussed in low voices. Go Sheng. Sun Ningquan put his hand on Su Xiaoma's shoulder and said, Don't be afraid. With senior brother here, that guy won't dare to bully you. Thank you, senior brother. Su Xiaoma carried his food and found a place to sit. Then, intentionally or otherwise, he looked at Xia Shuiyan, who was eating with her head lowered, and his heart collapsed. Is she doing this on purpose or not? Elder Jun Tian. In the sect of all times, Jun Changshao leaned back in his chair and muttered, My new identity? Li Luoqiu smiled. Little Mo also said that Elder Xia's granddaughter, Xia Shuiyan, has been bothering him recently, so she was warned by the outer disciples and asked what the patriarch should do. Now that he has a firm foothold in Taishan Shengzong, if he wants to climb up, he must use his strength to move the upper echelons. Jun Changshao thought for a moment and said, Tell little Mo that there's no need to keep a low profile all the time. If he explodes at the right time, he can gain the upper echelon's attention. In traditional novels, when the main character entered a sect, they would go from the initial forbearance to the full display of their abilities, then to the point where they would slaughter their way to the peak of their lives. That was why he planned to let Su Xiaoma do this. Okay. Li Luoqiu left and sent the message out. Jun Changshao rubbed his chin and said, if an expert's disciple entered Taishan Xingzong's sect is known, he should be able to gain enough attention, right? He lightly tapped his fingers on the armrest. Once the matter of the planar battlefield is over, I will use Elder Jun Tian's identity to do something, to make Little Mo's lies more realistic and three-dimensional. The system said, the host wants to let Su Xiaomo advance to a higher position, not just to obtain Lu Chanxian and Fang Linyu's matters. If my disciple has the ability to infiltrate a large sect and gain an important position, that's not bad either. Jun Changshao said. Taishan Shengzong. After Su Xiaomo received Hall Master Li's message, he thought to himself, how can I explode at the right time? This right time was very important. He couldn't just release his cultivation to Martial King, then beat up He Zongying. Torturing him was fine. But it had to be reasonable, so that others couldn't find fault with it. Let's go to the scripture pavilion and exchange merit for martial skills. Su Xiaomo stood up, then entered the scripture pavilion for outer sect disciples, picked a movement and a fist technique, then left after registering. This brat used 500 merit to exchange for 2 of the most difficult martial skills to learn. The scripture pavilion elder glanced at the registration book, seeing the names of 2 relatively high-ranked martial skills that were hard to learn. His eyes were filled with surprise. After returning to his place, Su Xiaomo began to focus on cultivation. With his saint-grade spiritual root and martial king cultivation, comprehending this kind of high-ranked martial skill is as easy as pie. Let's go. Xia Shuiyun shouted from outside, go do your mission. Yes, senior apprentice sister. Su Xiaomo stood up and continued to interact with this woman, continuing to do missions to earn martial skills resources that will give him a reason to become stronger. He Zongying has the qualifications to become an outer sect disciple. On the way to do missions, Xia Shuiyun said, if you can defeat him, you'll definitely be valued by the higher-ups. Su Xiaomo's mouth twitched, you're asking me to do missions every day, is that on purpose? I'm helping you fulfill your dream. Xia Shuiyun stopped and turned around to look at him. Sure enough, every time this woman comes to me openly, it's on purpose. She's purposely causing trouble for me. Although he doesn't know what her intentions are, Su Xiaomo also knows that if he can defeat He Zongying under reasonable circumstances, he'll definitely gain a lot of recognition. Here. Xia Shuiyun casually tossed over a space ring, saying, there are 50 natural spirit stones inside. This. Su Xiaomo was stunned. 50 natural spirit stones is already quite a lot. An outer sect disciple of Taishan Xingzong might not even be able to earn that much in a few years. Don't ask why. Xia Shuiyun said, I just hate He Zongying. Su Xiaomo understood. That guy always comes to bother her, so she's purposely getting close to me to use me as a shield. Su Xiaomo smiled, the person that senior apprentice sister hates is my enemy. Senior apprentice sister hates the entire world, so I'll be the world's enemy. Xia Shuiyun's expression froze, whispering, big idiot. Chapter 866. Huff huff. In the sect of all times, a strong aura of advancement rose in the inner courtyard. Creak. Li Qingyang pushed open the door and walked out. He looked even more energetic. Not bad, not bad. Jun Changshao sat in the main hall and smiled. You didn't waste the spirit stones I gave you. You reached the peak of Martial King faster than expected. At this moment, there were only 2 months left until the end of the epic mission. Li Qingyang became a peak Martial King after Yi Xingqian because he entered the Lingyan Pavilion and obtained the divine grade spiritual root. Congratulations, second senior brother. Li Fei, Tian Qi, and the rest congratulated him. Li Qingyang said, you guys have to work hard and break through to the peak of Martial King in 2 months. Don't disappoint the patriarch. As the head of internal affairs, he was very competent. Yes. Everyone nodded, their faces full of confidence. The patriarch gave them so many natural spirit stones and all kinds of martial arts facilities. It was not difficult to reach the peak of Martial King in 2 months. Li Fei, Tian Qi, and the rest were stimulated by Li Qingyang's breakthrough and were even more diligent in their cultivation. Let's go to the spirit gathering array to cultivate and catch up with second senior brother and junior brother Yi. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Just as they reached the outer courtyard, unrestrained laughter came from the spirit beast hall. Swish! Hall Master Z landed on the martial arts field and clenched his fists. Bang! His clothes burst open and his purple hair danced under the release of his aura. He looked extremely arrogant. The Purple King's eyes were burning. I've finally recovered my strength before I was sealed. During this period of time, he had to eat 2 out of 3 meals a day, which made him feel very wronged. So, he could only focus on recovering. As he wished, he reached the level before he was sealed. In the main hall, Jun Changshao held his face and said, in other words, if I want to seal you again, I need at least 5 wusheng. 5? Humph, that was in the past. The Purple King flipped a strand of hair in front of his forehead and said proudly, now, I have to add at least 1 more. Jun Changshao almost fell off his chair. I fucking thought you were very awesome, but in the end, you only have 1 more than before. You still have the nerve to brag about it. If that's the case, Jun Changshao said, can you fight 5 wusheng by yourself now? No problem. Perhaps it was because he had recovered his strength, but the Purple King was still very arrogant. His nose was so high up in the sky that it was almost shoulder to shoulder with the sun. In the cafeteria, the arrogant hall master Z no longer cared about his status and was wolfing down the delicacies. A month of punishment had just ended today. Therefore, not only could he eat 3 meals a day, but he could also eat more. Only when he had it again would he know how to cherish it. After finishing the bowl of rice, all the rice grains were licked clean by Hall Master Z. After that, he raised his thumb and said, your culinary skills are getting better and better. Lu Wancher sat at the side and said with heartache, Hall Master Z has only eaten 1 meal a month. Your face is almost skinny. As a top chef in the sect, what she cared about the most was her fellow disciples going hungry or losing weight. She was especially worried that senior brother Su would not be able to eat well in the Taishan zone. Therefore, she decided that when senior brother Su came back, she would definitely give him a lot of nourishment. Sigh. The Purple King sighed and said, it's my fault for not completing the task given to me. At this time, if he knew that he had accidentally helped Su Xiaoma to obtain a higher level of recognition in the Taishan zone, he would definitely flip the table and go to the patriarch to reason with him. Why did he have to punish him by reducing 2 of his meals out of 3? It's okay. Lu Wancher smiled and said, he will recover in a few days. Yes. The Purple King placed the empty bowl at the side and grinned. Another bowl of fried rice. Sigh. A demon king had fallen to such a state. It made one sigh. Those subordinates. Elder Nyo leaned over and said with a smile, give me a bowl too. Fine. Everything had changed. This demon king from the upper realm has recovered his strength before he was sealed. He will definitely be of help to me when I enter the dimensional battlefield for revenge. Jun Changshao sat in the study and thought. Being suppressed by an earth-ranked powerhouse was an unforgettable hatred. He would not forget it. Moreover, the system mentioned it every day. Elder Ding. King of 100 Hills. Now, there was also the Purple King. Jun Changshao was confident in his revenge. He was also confident in entering the dimensional battlefield for the second time and causing trouble. Of course. At the same time, he was looking forward to it. How many contribution points and rewards could he get from the 2 missions at the same time? Damn it. I can't wait. The more he thought, the more restless Jun Changshao became. Patriarch. Li Luoqiu said, Little Mo sent news that she signed up for the Taishan Shengzong's outer disciple exam in a month. Looks like she found the right time, Jun Changshao said with a smile. For the past month, Su Xiaoma had been doing missions under Xia Shuiyan's lead. The difficulty was relatively high, but the rewards were very generous. It helped him accumulate the capital to cultivate and become stronger. An outer disciple called He Zonging came to cause trouble. The two of them have agreed to a battle. The victor will be decided in the outer disciple exam, Li Luoqiu said. Jun Changshao said, he dares to provoke the disciple I nurtured. He really doesn't know how to write the word death. Regarding the battle between Su Xiaoma and He Zonging, the outer disciples of the Taishan Shengzong were also widely discussed. However, most of them supported the latter. After all, he entered the sect early and had the highest chance of becoming an inner disciple. Creak. The door was pushed open. Sun Yingquan walked in quickly and roared, "Junior brother Su, was your brain kicked by a donkey? You actually agreed to He Zonging's battle." Su Xiaoma paused his cultivation and scratched his head. He kept humiliating me. I couldn't help but agree. You. Sun Yingquan sat down and said, "How about this? I'll ask my father to cancel this battle." He was thinking for Su Xiaoma. After all, He Zonging was very strong. Since you agreed, you have to fight. Not to mention, Su Xiaoma's expression suddenly turned serious. I also want to use my strength to tell others that although I, Go Sheng, have a low status, I'm not a pushover. Sun Yingquan was stunned. His junior brother's determined gaze reminded him of the scene in the Yunling Mountains where he did not yield even in the face of powerful spiritual beasts. All right. I understand. Sun Yingquan stood up and patted him on the shoulder, encouraging him, no matter how the outside world doubts you, your senior brother will always stand by your side and cheer for you. Thank you. Su Xiaoma said with a smile. Sun Yingquan lightly punched his chest with his fist and pretended to be angry. If you say thank you again, I'll beat you up. Hee. Su Xiaoma laughed foolishly. Here. Sun Yingquan handed over a space ring and said, there are 100 natural spiritual stones inside. I saved them by living frugally. Take them and cultivate. When the time comes, you must put that guy on the ground. This is too valuable. Su Xiaoma and Sun Yingquan's eyes met. Without another word, he took the ring and vowed, I won't disappoint you, senior brother. I'll definitely defeat He Zonging in the outer sect assessment. He decided. Not for his career as a spy. But for Sun Yingquan's timely help, he must win the competition. He Zonging. Taishan Shengzong disciple. Once I, Su Xiaoma, get serious, none of you can stop me. Chapter 867. Su Gosheng has only been an outer sect disciple for a few months. Although his performance in the Yunling Mountains was outstanding and he received 500 merit points, challenging senior brother He, there must be something wrong with his head. Elder Xia's granddaughter has been dragging him to do missions and received quite a lot of rewards. He also often goes to the Spirit Chi formation to cultivate. His strength should have improved quite a bit. Junior brother He is a genuine Wuzong after all. No matter how much he cultivates as a martial master, he won't be able to defeat him. The Taishan Shengzong disciples were all discussing the battle between Su Xiaoma and He Zonging. It even alerted the higher-ups. They took the initiative to talk about it during the regular meeting. Ha ha ha. Elder Sun laughed. To dare challenge He Zonging, an outer sect disciple who has been in the sect for many years, Gosheng sure has guts. His son had a good relationship with Su Xiaoma, so it was reasonable for him to stand on the latter's side. Moreover, he had been providing help to Su Xiaoma during this period to buy time for him to enter the Spirit Chi formation. He Zonging has the potential to become an inner sect disciple after all. To challenge him is overestimating himself. It's not surprising that he dares to challenge a fellow disciple of a higher realm in the Yunling Mountains without any regard for his life. Third elder said, Elder Xia, I heard that your granddaughter has been very close to that kid recently. That's right. Elder Xia nodded. Ever since that incident, Shui Yun has been very optimistic about that kid. She often provides him with martial arts assistance. From the looks of it, third elder said, Maybe he didn't agree to He Zongying's battle on impulse, but because he's confident. The Technique Pavilion elder beside him said, "Not long ago, that kid used 500 merit points to exchange for the 6 styles of Flame Palm and 9 winding shadow steps. He should be prepared." What? Elder Sun and Elder Xia were surprised. The 6 styles of Flame Palm and 9 winding shadow steps were high-grade martial arts. Although their quality was not top-notch, they were extremely difficult to cultivate. Third Elder smiled and said, "This Su Gosheng might be able to bring us an unexpected surprise." Creak. The door was pushed open and Sun Ningquan hurriedly walked in. "Gosheng, you used 500 merit points to choose the 6 styles of Raging Flame Palm and 9 winding shadow steps?" "Yes." Su Xiaoma nodded. "Fuck." Sun Ningquan sat down and said with a crumbling face, "Although the ranks of these 2 martial arts are not low, they are extremely difficult to cultivate. Using merit points on them is a complete waste." Su Xiaoma scratched his head and said, "I didn't know either. I just felt that the introduction was pretty awesome, so I bought it without thinking." Sigh. Sun Ningquan said, "Tell me, I'll accompany you to the Cultivation Technique Pavilion. I'll definitely be able to use the least amount of merit points to exchange for the most cost-effective martial arts. Next time, call me Senior Brother Sun," Su Xiaoma said. "Well, I won't disturb your cultivation anymore." Sun Ningquan stood up, but before he left, he said, "I heard from my father that the Third Elder seems to think highly of you." "The Third Elder thinks highly of me?" Su Xiaoma said to himself, "It seems that the preparations I've made during this period of time have already made him think that there's a possibility of defeating He Zongying." Taishan Shengzong's cultivation facilities were far inferior to the Sect of all times. As a martial king, going in was purely a waste of time. It was of no help to his cultivation at all. He had to act even if it didn't help, because he had to create the impression that his victory over He Zongying wasn't due to luck, but due to his hard work in cultivation. Only then would the higher-ups not be suspicious. Of course. Only by slightly revealing his aptitude would he be able to get better recognition, and only then could he have a meteoric rise. "Look, it's Su Xiaoma. This guy hasn't left his room recently. He must be working hard in his cultivation. The gap between him and Senior Brother He isn't just 1 or 2 steps. Making a last-minute effort to cultivate is completely useless." On the way to the cafeteria, Su Xiaoma heard everyone's discussion, and a smile appeared on his face. He wasn't worried that the disciples would look down on him. He just needed to let them know that he had been working hard in his cultivation. That way, his victory over He Zongying wouldn't be too sudden. It had to be said. Su Xiaoma's calculations were very precise, and the chess pieces he played were getting bigger and bigger. In the Sect of all times. Although Jun Changshao wasn't present, he was constantly listening to Li Luoqiu's report. He also gave high praise to Su Xiaoma for what he had done in Taishan Shengzong recently. This disciple of his was experiencing a plot that only the main character would appear in, and he was doing very well. He kept the suspense, and also provided a good explanation for him to become stronger. Little Emo Jun Changshao muttered to himself, "The outer sect assessment is a springboard. As long as you control it well, you'll be more comfortable in Taishan Shengzong." Whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, the momentum of a breakthrough appeared. Jun Changshao released his spiritual thoughts and smiled in satisfaction. "Not bad, not bad. Zui Ji has also broken through to the peak of Martial King." Half a month later, Li Fei, Tian Qi, Long Xiang, and the other core disciples stepped into the peak of Martial King one after another. "This is the Surge Talisman." Jun Changshao generously took out the talisman and said, "After using it, it will allow you to temporarily break through a big realm." There were many good things in the Patriarch. Li Qingyang and the others had long been used to it, so they took the talisman and crushed it. Their realms instantly entered the Emperor realm from the King realm. Oh my god, it's amazing. The feeling of improvement just now was as if I had really broken through to Wu Huang. Everyone was dumbfounded. Jun Changshao said, "The effect of the Surge Talisman is not to make you stronger, but to let you experience the feeling of advancement and a higher realm faster. It will be easier for you to break through." "I see." Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others sat down cross-legged. They used their hearts to experience the feeling of advancement just now, as well as to feel the cultivation they had now. Except for Yi Xingqian and He Wudi, Wu Huang was a new and unknown level for them. They would definitely benefit a lot if they could experience it faster than others. Shua! After a while, Li Fei stood up. He pushed his right foot against the ground and channeled some kind of energy in his dantian. His entire body flew into the air. Then, he couldn't help but laugh excitedly, "Ha ha ha, I'm flying, I'm flying. Ah, I'm so envious." Li Tian covered his head with his hands. His dream was to fly. Breaking through to Wu Huang and gaining the ability to fly would undoubtedly fulfill his childhood dream. It was a pity that he was only a rank 7 martial king. He was still far from reaching the peak. Not good. Right at this moment, Li Fei, who was flying high in the sky, suddenly lost his balance and fell to the ground with a thud. One needed time to get used to the ability to fly. Cultivators who had just started using it often lost their balance and fell. "Let me give it a try too." Li Qingyang stood up and slowly rose into the air. As expected of a man with the word "steady" in his name. He was very careful in his flight and didn't fall. Put on. On the other side, Li Fei took off for the second time. However, because he was too hasty, he didn't control his body well and fell on the ground again. Then, with 2 big bumps on his head, he said, "I don't believe it." Shua! Shua! Xiao Ziji, Long Xiang, and the others relied on the rapid increase talisman to fly. Thus, in the sky above the outer courtyard of the Sect of All Times, the disciples could be seen swaying up and down as they practiced flying. The scene was very awkward. Although they were in a sorry state, there was no doubt that these core disciples would be able to get used to it quickly once they stepped into Emperor Realm and gained the ability to fly. This could be considered another benefit of the rapid increase talisman. I'm so envious. Work hard to cultivate and become stronger. Sooner or later, we'll be able to soar in the sky like senior brother. Chapter 868. Half a month later. On the day of the Taishan Shengzong's outer disciple assessment. Creak. Su Xiaoma pushed open the door and strode out in his brand new outer disciple uniform. Patriarch. As he adjusted his wrist, he looked up at the rising sun and said to himself, "This disciple is going to have fun." Little Mo, in the Sect of All Times, Jun Changshao, who had just finished his morning exercises with his disciples, stood alone in front of the main hall and said with his hands behind his back, "Today's Taishan Shengzong's outer disciple assessment is destined to be the stage for you to show your true self." Although the sun had just risen, the fairy-like clouds in the outer courtyard of Taishan Shengzong had yet to completely dissipate. It looked quite otherworldly. The Sect of All Times could not compare to a sect with such a long history. One after another. Some disciples appeared outside the training field and lined up in an orderly manner. These people were just spectators. The real protagonists were the hundreds of outer disciples standing in the eastern area. They were dressed in martial attire and looked valiant. As a top sect in the Starfall continent, the disciples they recruited were very powerful. Just by standing there, one could tell that they were not ordinary people. However, some of the disciples who were about to participate in the assessment had burning gazes, while others were nervous. The outer disciple assessment was held every year at a fixed time as promised. Although it was not as valuable as the Sect tournament, it was still an important competition to evaluate the disciples. If they could get good results in the assessment, they would be rewarded with varying amounts of merit points. They might even be valued by the higher-ups. No wonder their emotions were so complicated. Su Xiaoma stood in the crowd. He looked nervous, but his heart was calm. Before he joined the Sect of All Times, he would have panicked if he participated in the assessment. However, not only did he have the cultivation of a martial king, but he had also gone through all kinds of life and death experiences with the patriarch and his fellow disciples. He had long cultivated a strong heart. Kid. He Zonging, who was separated by a few disciples, said calmly, "You actually dared to come." "I signed up for the assessment. Of course I have to come." Su Xiaoma smiled innocently. This expression, this smile, made He Zonging's gaze gradually turn cold. When the other contestants saw this, they immediately realized that senior brother He was angry. If they met during the assessment, junior brother Su would be in for a miserable time. "Junior brother," Xia Shuiyun said coldly from afar, "don't disappoint me." This woman. Su Xiaoma was on the verge of breaking down. "She's making enemies for me again." True enough. The coldness in He Zonghua's eyes intensified. The participating disciples and spectators all thought to themselves, Elder Xia's granddaughter took the initiative to talk to that guy under such circumstances. Who would believe that there's nothing between the two of them? Cough cough. Right at this moment, the third elder that was in charge of the outer court exam this time walked out from the sect hall, and then he announced with his hands behind his back. "The outer court exam will begin now. Participants, please draw a number to choose your opponent." Because it was held many times every year, the opening ceremony was very simple. Schwa! Schwa! Hundreds of contestants stepped onto the martial arts field that had been temporarily raised to look like an arena. Then, they reached into a specific box to select their own tokens. Su Xiaoma also went up on stage. Just as he was about to draw his lot. "Elder," He Zonghua said, "Junior brother Su and I have a duel appointment. Can we fight without drawing a number?" "Yes." The third elder allowed it. The Taishan Shengzong did not allow disciples to fight in private. They only allowed duels to resolve conflicts. Someone whispered, "Senior brother He is worried that junior brother Su will be eliminated by other opponents and won't be able to meet him in the exam. Junior brother Su is going to be eliminated in one round." Many disciples looked at Su Xiaoma sympathetically. In their hearts, He Zonghua was the most popular candidate to win the outer court exam this time. "Since you have a duel appointment, then go up on stage first," the third elder said. He knew exactly what Su Xiaoma had been busy with recently, so he was very curious. Could this kid bring him an unexpected surprise? Schwa! He Zonghua gracefully landed on the martial arts field and said, "Junior brother Su, please go up on stage." Under everyone's gaze, Su Xiaoma walked up in a very clumsy manner. Then, he humbly cupped his hands and said, "Senior brother He, please advise me." Everyone's mouth twitched. This was not a duel. This was a duel appointment. Moreover, senior brother Su was fighting for love. He would probably be very serious when he fought. I bet that junior brother Su can last 10 rounds at most. 10 rounds is too many. With senior brother Su's cultivation, he can take him down in 3 to 5 rounds at most. The spectating outer disciples were all discussing and belittling Su Xiaoma. Only Sun Yingquan, who was standing in the crowd, shouted at the top of his lungs, "Junior brother Su, do your best. Junior brother Su has just joined the sect, and he's already calling elder son brother. He's quite capable. Isn't he just trying to curry favor from both sides? What real ability can he have?" There were still some disciples who despised Su Xiaoma's smooth-talking and flattery. Some of them really could not stand it. They thought that one had to rely on true ability to survive in the Taishan Shengzong. Some were just envious that they did not have any flattery skills, so their mentality turned into jealousy. "You may begin," the third elder said. Swoosh! He Zongying stepped out first. His peak Wuzong cultivation was fully unleashed. He then threw a heavy punch, and the space around him started to shake. "Triple space-crossing fist," a disciple exclaimed. This was an upper-grade fist technique of the Taishan Shengzong. Its specialty was that it could shake space when used. "Not bad." An elder praised, "You've already comprehended it to the realm of great success." Swoosh! At that moment, Su Xiaoma twisted his body backward. Although his movement was not very nice, he easily dodged He Zongying's attack. Then, his feet stepped on the ground frequently, forming a strange posture. 9 winding shadow steps. The third elder and the other higher-ups were stunned. They knew that Su Xiaoma had exchanged for this movement technique. They should not have been surprised when he used it, but they did not expect him to use it so smoothly. It felt like he had mastered it to the extreme. Swoosh! Swoosh! When the 9 winding shadow steps was used, the 9 points spun rapidly, creating afterimages. The disciples watching the battle were all stunned. Even the cold and arrogant Xia Shuiyun was in disbelief. He can actually master an upper-grade movement technique to such an extent in such a short time. His talent and comprehension are definitely not ordinary. The third elder and the others also realized this problem. They could not help but mutter in their hearts, could it be that this kid's spirit root is not middle grade? When Taishan Shengzong recruited disciples, it was the same as the sect of all times. They would not actively test the applicant's spirit roots. Instead, they would choose based on various tests. Spirit roots only determined the upper limit and speed of cultivation. Those with weaker spirit roots might be able to achieve something if they had perseverance and hard work. After all, there were only a few geniuses with high talent. If a sect wanted to develop in a balanced manner for a long time, they would naturally choose more average youths to nurture. Otherwise, it would be unrealistic to have all the disciples with upper-grade spirit roots. This, perhaps the sect of all times could do something that was unrealistic. Chapter 869. It was impossible for the sects of the Falling Star continent to have all their disciples with superior-grade spiritual roots. However, the sect of all times might be able to do it. As long as Jun Gosheng did not use his contribution points to exchange for other items and use them to exchange for superior-grade aptitude modification elixirs, it was not impossible for everyone to have superior-grade spiritual roots in the long run. Su Xiaoma, who came to Taishan Shengzong as a spy, claimed that he had a middle-grade spiritual root. Therefore, when he performed the 9 winding shadow steps so smoothly, the higher-ups immediately believed that without a strong enough spiritual root, it would be impossible to comprehend it to such a level in such a short time. How is this possible? He Zongying was also shocked. He had learned the 9 winding shadow steps before. After studying it for a few months, he felt that it was not as cost-effective as other movement techniques, so he chose to give it up. Now, not only did the guy who had just learned it, but he had also reached the level of flowing shadow steps. He had definitely comprehended it to the extreme. Whoosh! Whoosh! At that moment, he heard the sound of an explosion. A palm print that seemed to carry flames came from the side. It was so fast and powerful that it made He Zongying's heart skip a beat. This is bad, boom! Thump! 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 He Zongying was hit and staggered back. After he steadied himself, he looked at the faint flames gathering on Su Xiaoma's right fist and said in disbelief, 6th-style blazing palm. Whoosh! Su Xiaoma did not say anything. He performed the 9 winding shadow steps again and performed the 6th-style blazing palm when there was an opening. Instantly, waves of heat appeared on the training field. The spectating disciples and contestants were dumbfounded. Su Xiaoma and He Zongying had agreed to a duel a month ago. Other than a few disciples, most people believed that the latter would easily defeat the former. After all, they were not on the same level. However, now that the two of them were fighting, Go Sheng, who was not favored, performed the 6th-style blazing palm and 9 winding shadow steps. Naturally, everyone present found it hard to believe. Including Sun Yingquan, Xia Shuiyun, and the higher-ups of Taishan Shengzong. Whoosh! Whoosh! Boom! Boom! On the training field, Su Xiaoma used his body movement to move around, and at the right time, he would find a flaw and attack with the 6th style of Raging Flame Palm. This kind of fighting style was both elegant and unpredictable, but also firm and powerful. It was very pleasing to the eye. However, but it was also hard to find any trace of him. Unable to keep up with his opponent's rhythm in a short period of time, he could only fall into a passive position step by step. Step by step, he was forced to stagger back from the stage. Third Elder. One of the elders said in surprise, "This Su Gosheng's cultivation is at the level of Wuzong." With just two types of martial arts that had reached the pinnacle, it would be very difficult for Su Xiaoma to defeat He Zongying, who had already reached the pinnacle of Wuzong. Therefore, it was necessary to release his realm to Wuzong's level. A month ago, he had just broken through to Martial Master. A month later, he has the cultivation of Wuzong. Is he hiding his cultivation on purpose, or did he cultivate? An elder questioned. From a normal point of view, the higher-ups were more willing to believe that Su Xiaoma had been hiding his cultivation all this time. It should be both, third elder guessed. Elder Sun said, "My son gave all 100 natural spirit stones that he had stored for many years to this kid. He has been cultivating very hard recently, so it's not surprising that he has the cultivation of Wuzong." Shui Yun also gave him 50 natural spirit stones, Elder Xia said. Hearing the two of them say that, the elders who still had doubts were immediately relieved. One of them said, "No wonder this kid could break through to Wuzong in such a short period of time. He was given so many resources." Su Xiaoma's efforts did not go to waste. Although his sudden increase in strength shocked everyone, with the foreshadowing and the natural spirit stones given by Sun Yingquan and Xia Shuiyun, the higher-ups did not feel that it was too sudden. Of course. He also knew that no matter the result of this battle, he would be tested for his spiritual root aptitude. Therefore, as he attacked He Zongying, he thought to himself, what level should I release? He definitely could not reveal his saint-level aptitude, because it would cause a huge uproar. He might even be interrogated and investigated multiple times by the sect. Although he had done his background research, there was still a chance that his identity would be exposed if he was careless. High level is too common. Su Xiaoma thought for a while and made a decision. Let's use the supreme grade spiritual root. A supreme grade spiritual root was already very good in second or third rate sects, but it was only average in the first rate sections. Boom! Su Xiaoma seized the opportunity and used the sixth style of blazing palm on He Zongying's back. The spectating disciples' mouths twitched. Many people thought that Senior He could finish off Gosheng in 10 moves, but the two had exchanged almost 30 moves. Not only did the former fail, but he was also being suppressed. Damn it! He Zongying, who had stabilized his body, had a cold look in his eyes. He could not accept that a disciple who had just joined the sect had beaten him so badly. Huff! Huff! He clenched his fists, and powerful spirit energy burst out from his body. He was furious. He was going to launch a desperate counterattack. Whoosh! At that moment, Su Xiaoma circled behind him and used the sixth style of blazing palm again, knocking He Zongying, who was about to explode, several meters away. He had only released a little bit of Wuzong's cultivation, and he had relied on two types of Taishan Xingzong martial arts to beat him so badly that he could not tell which way was north. This guy was truly trash. He was not trash either. With his cultivation, he could suppress any disciple of the same level if he went to a second-rate or third-rate sect. Unfortunately, Su Xiaoma, who had walked out of the sect of all times, had gone through all kinds of training and experience. Even if he was only a rank 1 or rank 2 Wuzong, he could completely suppress him with his rich combat experience. If I'm going to fight, I'll fight big. Whoosh! Su Xiaoma quickly closed in and unleashed a barrage of attacks. Scorching hot palm prints filled the training grounds and waves of heat swept out in all directions. What he needed to do was not give He Zongying a chance to counterattack and completely crush him. Whoosh! Whoosh! Boom! 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 Under the concentrated attacks, He Zongying was beaten back again and again. He did not even have the chance to charge up and explode. He was in an extremely difficult situation. The outer sect disciple's mouth twitched violently. He was one of the favorites to win the championship, yet he was beaten so badly by an outer sect disciple who had just joined the sect not long ago. Oh my god! Sun Yingquan was still in a state of shock. He said dumbfoundedly, "Go Sheng, he's so strong." Xia Shuiyan thought to herself, he's already thought it through. He's planning to use his true strength to tell his fellow disciples that he's not just a sucker for flattery and bootlicker. Ah! Ah! Boom! He Zongying wanted to explode, but this kind of battle could only rely on shouting, so Su Xiaoma punched him in the face. He staggered a few steps back and almost fell on his butt. They're not on the same level. The elders shook their heads. From the short exchange, they could already tell that while Su Xiaoma's cultivation was not very high, his combat experience and martial arts usage were completely superior. Surprise! A very big surprise. A smile appeared on Third Elder's face. There were many disciples who joined the top sects every year, so it was normal for unexpected geniuses to appear. However, this Gosheng gave Third Elder the feeling that while his cultivation was not high, his combat and martial arts usage were very experienced. Without the guidance of a master, it was impossible for him to reach such a level. Boom! At that moment, He Zongying, who was completely suppressed, could not withstand the bombardment. In the end, he was knocked out of the training field and sat on the ground. His expression was ferocious, and intense pain came from all over his body. Senior He. Su Xiaoma stood on the stage and saluted. Thank you for letting me win. First battle. Third Elder did not waste any time and immediately announced, Gosheng wins. He Zongying is eliminated. Chapter 870. Su Xiaoma defeated He Zongying, who had the highest chance of becoming an inner sect disciple in the lower realm. After the Third Elder's announcement, the scene fell into a temporary silence. Even if a needle fell, it could be heard clearly. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, Sun Yingquan laughed loudly and shouted, Junior brother Sun is mighty. His relationship with Su Xiaoma was already very close. Now that he defeated the seemingly unreachable He Zongying, he was definitely overjoyed. Amazing! Junior brother Su is so strong. We've all underestimated him. Although the disciples who originally thought that He Zongying would definitely win were slapped in the face, they still looked at Su Xiaoma with admiration in their eyes. Defeating a strong opponent with fair strength in the ring would naturally earn the respect of other martial artists. Of course. Without any foreshadowing, many disciples would subconsciously wonder how Gosheng could defeat He Zongying. How? By cultivating hard and relying on various resources. Pfft! He Zongying, who was paralyzed on the ground, spat out a mouthful of blood. Clearly, he could not accept losing to a new disciple and losing in the first round of the outer sect assessment. Contestants number 1 and 2, come on stage. The Third Elder shouted. Although Su Xiaoma's strong performance gave him quite a surprise, the outer sect assessment still had to continue. Swoosh! Swoosh! Contestants who drew number 1 and 2 went on stage to battle. At this point, the outer sect assessment began to proceed in an orderly manner. As the winner, Su Xiaoma only needed to wait for the next round. Boom! Senior brother Qin, thank you for letting me win. In the ring, Su Xiaoma clasped his hands and said. Below the ring, disciple Qin clasped his hands and said, Junior brother Su's cultivation is strong. I accept my defeat wholeheartedly. After defeating the favorite for the championship, He Zongying, no one was surprised that Su Xiaoma won the second round. They had even concluded that the champion of this assessment would be none other than him. In a similar battle mode, Su Xiaoma continued the sect of all time's fine tradition of making it simpler and simpler the more he fought. This was not. After a few words, the finals of the outer court exam had arrived. Su Xiaoma still relied on 2 types of martial arts to easily defeat his opponent and become the champion of this assessment. It's too simple. There's no suspense at all. All the disciples were speechless. Come to think of it, only Su Xiaoma and He Zongying's battle in the entire outer sect examination could be considered exciting. The first round of the competition could be called the finals. Su Gosheng came out on top in this year's outer court examination. He is rewarded with 500 merit points and 20 natural spirit stones. The third elder announced loudly. After the award ceremony, he said, "Come to the main hall." Yes. Su Xiaoma thought to himself, the result of being reckless is to be the center of attention. In the main hall, Su Xiaoma stood there obediently. A few elders sat at the front and released their spiritual senses at all times, hoping to find out more about this kid. Unfortunately, once the hidden cultivation technique from the upper realm was activated, it only showed them what they wanted to see. "Little fellow," the third elder said, "do you want to say it yourself, or do I have to wait for someone to ask?" Reporting to the elders, Su Xiaoma said loudly, "My name is Su Jintang. I live in Sujiagu in the southern Baron state. When I was young, I met a senior who called himself Old Man Jun Tian. Then, I became his disciple and cultivated martial arts for a few years. Now that things had come to this, there was no way he could hide it anymore." He took the initiative to say it, and the elders nodded. "Old Man Jun Tian." The third elder touched his chin and said, "I've never heard of this person." Reporting to the elders, Su Xiaoma said, "Master once said that he rarely stepped into the Jianghu. He likes to travel between mountains and rivers. So, he's a hermit." Many martial artists from the Falling Star continent went to the sands of Ganges. It was likely that there were many powerhouses who did not care about fame and fortune and lived a carefree life. The most famous one was the Taishan old man. Such a super powerhouse who could cross the void only passed down 2 cultivation techniques above the divine grade. There were very few other deeds related to him. "So, you already had the cultivation of Wuzong before you joined the sect?" Reporting to the elders, "I broke through during this 1 month of cultivation. It's all thanks to the sect's resources and the natural spirit stones given by senior brother Sun and sister Xia. It's hard to break through to Wuzong in such a short time without an extremely high spiritual root. Come." The third elder waved his hand and took out something like a glass ball. He said, "Put your palm on it." Su Xiaoma knew that it was used to test the spiritual root. So, he took 2 steps forward and put his right hand on it. Then, he used the hidden cultivation technique to suppress the level of his spiritual root. Whoosh! After a while, the glass ball flashed and showed a slightly red color. The third elder said, "So, it's a supreme-grade spiritual root." The other elders whispered to each other. Su Xiaoma thought to himself, the patriarch's hidden cultivation technique is really awesome. It can even suppress the level of my spiritual root. It's normal for someone with a supreme-grade spiritual root to break through to Wuzong in such a short time by relying on a large amount of spirit stones and resources. Many of the elders came to this conclusion, and they could understand why Su Xiaoma had become so strong. "Little guy." The third elder smiled and said, "You've hidden your strength well." Su Xiaoma scratched his head and said, "When I went down the mountain, Master told me to keep a low profile and never show off." All the elders burst into laughter. It was reasonable for a hermit to teach a low-profile disciple. "You can leave now." The third elder waved his hand. "Yes." Su Xiaoma left. After returning to his room, he picked up the teapot and gulped down the tea. When he was in the main hall, he was very nervous when facing a group of senior Taishan Shenzong officials. He was afraid that he would expose himself and be questioned by them. Now that I've shown them my supreme-grade spiritual root, they will definitely investigate my identity. I hope I don't give myself away. Su Xiaoma thought to himself. As expected, the elders in the main hall were still discussing Su Xiaoma, and they had already ordered the intelligence division to investigate this Su Jintang as soon as possible. It wasn't that they suspected him of being a spy. It was that supreme-grade spiritual root was already considered excellent. A large sect would naturally do things according to the rules and thoroughly investigate his identity. It was unlike the sect of all times. Because there were various restrictions and there was no need to worry about secrets being leaked, the disciples' identities were not checked too much. As long as they passed the test, they would be accepted into the sect. The Taishan Shengzong acted quickly. In just a few days, they found information about Su Jintang, and it was the same as what Su Xiaoma said. Su Jintang really existed in the Falling Star continent, and he did live in Sujiagu in the southern Barren state. He had a supreme-grade spiritual root, but he left home when he was 8 or 9 years old. Where was he? In the sect of all times. The Taishan Shengzong definitely couldn't find this and old man Jun Tian. Everyone. The third elder said, Su Jintang's spiritual root is not bad, and he was accepted as a disciple by a hidden cultivator when he was young. I think he is worth nurturing. This child is smooth and slick, and he doesn't like to show off in front of others. He is indeed a good seedling that can be nurtured. Elder Sun expressed his opinion. As long as he had the chance, he would definitely put in a good word for Su Xiaoma in front of the elders. After all, he had placed his son there. Elder Xia said, we can give him this chance. With 2 elders expressing their opinions, the other higher-ups also agreed. So after some consideration, the third elder announced, make Su Jintang a member of the Inspection Pavilion. The Inspection Pavilion was a special department of the Taishan Shengzong. The disciples who entered all had various kinds of potential and enjoyed a certain amount of martial arts resources. If they performed well in the future, it would not be a problem for them to be promoted to the inner sect. Patriarch. When Su Xiaoma learned from Sun Yingquan that he had become a member of the Inspection Pavilion, he thought to himself, this disciple has gained the trust of the higher-ups. The next step is to be promoted to a disciple, and even become a core disciple. Jun Changshao, who was in the sect of all times, leaned back in his chair and crossed his legs after receiving the information from Li Luoqiu. He smiled and said, my precious disciple, when the day comes, I hope you will have become one of the important higher-ups in the Taishan Shengzong. Chapter 871. There was no time for Jun Changshao to reel in the net. Therefore, it was still unknown how far Su Xiaoma's undercover journey was and how far he could go. However, with this guy's slick personality, deliberately releasing his spiritual root and cultivation, and with the help of Sun Yingquan, Xia Shuiyun, and the 2 elders, it would be easy for him to climb up. The plan is going smoothly. However, I still have to keep a low profile to avoid causing trouble in the sect. The Taishan Shengzong's waters were very deep. The outer sect was just the tip of the iceberg. There were inner sect and core disciples above it. He naturally had to tread on thin ice and couldn't relax at all. To be exact, Su Xiaoma walked the path of a protagonist growing in the sect, but he couldn't be like a real protagonist who could do anything. In the future, he would deliberately interact with Xia Shuiyun more because Elder Xia's prestige in the elders group was higher than Elder Sun's. Of course. After being taught by Elder Wei, Su Xiaoma always maintained an ambiguous relationship with that cold woman. Let's go and do the mission. One day, Xia Shuiyun appeared again. You have to go. Okay. For the next few days, the 2 often appeared together in the mission pavilion, accepted missions, and left together. After He Zongying was defeated, it was as if he disappeared. In a world where martial arts were the most important, if you didn't have the strength to face competitors, you could only be a single dog for the rest of your life. Sorry, I'm not targeting some single readers, but please don't be sad or discouraged. As long as you are willing to work hard, you will definitely continue to be single. Junior brother Su and junior sister Xia are getting closer and closer. Although I feel that Su Jintang isn't good enough for Xia Shuiyun, he has a supreme-grade spiritual root and has a better chance than us. TSK, junior brother Su is really good at hiding. No wonder he defeated senior brother He. As Su Xiaoma and Xia Shuiyun interacted more and more frequently, the outer sect of the Taishan Shengzong discussed them more and more. Some even guessed that they might have already decided to be a couple. Taixian Shengzong did not object to disciples falling in love. He was more open-minded about this. Su Xiaoma had naturally heard of the discussions in the outside world. He helplessly said to himself, "My relationship with her isn't as exaggerated as you say." Xia Shuiyan's personality was cold and taciturn. Although the two of them interacted more and more frequently, the whole process was about accepting missions, completing missions, and handing in missions. Even if they occasionally talked, it was about martial arts. Of course, Su Xiaoma hoped to establish a relationship with this girl that surpassed that of fellow disciples. After all, if he could form a good relationship with Elder Xia, it would be beneficial for his future development in the sect. However, every time he thought about his real identity as a disciple of the Eternal Sect, if he made her fall in love with him, and after the sect leader pulled the net, he would say to her, "Sorry, I'm actually a spy." That would be too damn shameful. Su Xiaoma said to himself, "You can't do that when it comes to relationships." The sect of all times and the Taixian Shengzong did not have any grudges, and they were not here to cause trouble. Therefore, they had to restrain themselves and leave without any burden after completing the mission. "What are you thinking about?" On the way to complete the mission, Xia Shuiyan looked at him. "No, nothing. Recently, the matter between you and me has been spreading like wildfire in the sect." "Yes." Xia Shuiyan stopped in her tracks and turned her back to Su Xiaoma. "I only decided to help you because I felt that you have a lot of potential. Don't let your imagination run wild because of the rumors outside." Su Xiaoma was speechless as she thought to herself, "What nonsense am I thinking?" "Of course." Xia Shuiyan said, "It's not that you're not worthy of me, but that I'm not interested in relationships." After saying that, she walked straight away. Su Xiaoma's mouth twitched slightly. "Does this woman think that I'll pursue her?" "Senior sister." He hurriedly chased after her and said very seriously, "Actually, I'm not interested in relationships either." "That's for the best," Xia Shuiyan said. Boom! Boom! In the wilderness, a huge ninth-rank feral beast raised its thick forelimbs and attacked wildly. Icy sword aura. Ding! 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 Xia Shuiyan came over with her sword. She condensed her sword aura and hit the stone-like skin of the beast. Instantly, there was a crisp sound. Roar! The big beast roared and swung its thick tail fiercely. "Not good." Xia Shuiyan's expression changed slightly. "Senior sister, be careful." At this moment, Su Xiaoma rushed over from the side and pushed the woman who couldn't dodge away. Then, the tail hit him directly in the chest. He flew out and sank into the stone wall with a bang. Wah! He spat out a mouthful of blood and then rushed over with the 9 winding shadow steps. He grabbed Xia Shuiyan, who had just stabilized herself, and left this place as quickly as possible. Night fell. A bonfire rose in the cave. Xia Shuiyan sat on the side and leaned against the pheasant in a panic. She didn't seem to be very good at it. Wah! Su Xiaoma, who was in the middle of healing, spat out a mouthful of black blood. His brows gradually relaxed. "Are you okay?" Xia Shuiyan asked. Su Xiaoma replied, "Yes, I'm okay." Xia Shuiyan didn't say anything and continued to roast the pheasant. The atmosphere fell into an awkward state again. Su Xiaoma had long been accustomed to this kind of lack of verbal communication, so he got up and walked over. He said, "It's all burnt. Let me do it." Xia Shuiyan stepped aside. Su Xiaoma took out a cleaned pheasant and skillfully stuck it on a wooden stick and began to roast it. Xia Shuiyan didn't say anything, but her eyes were fixed on it, as if she was memorizing the entire process so that she could do it herself next time. "Senior sister." After a while, Su Xiaoma said, "Junior brother feels that sometimes you are too rash. For example, last time at the Een Mountain Ridge and this time, you acted rashly without confirming the target's strength." "I'm happy to do so," Xia Shuiyan said lightly. This woman still didn't realize her mistake. How lucky must she be to be able to survive until now? A cold woman was definitely a chatterbox. Su Xiaoma simply stopped talking. Here. A quarter of an hour later, he handed over the roasted pheasant and said, "It's ready to eat." Xia Shuiyan took it without hesitation. After eating, she pointed outside and said, "Old rules." Okay, okay. Su Xiaoma stood up. The so-called old rules meant that if they were sleeping in the wild, she would sleep in the cave and he would sleep outside the cave. After all, men and women were different. In fact, they used to sleep in the cave at the same time. But when Su Xiaoma turned around while sleeping, Xia Shuiyan suddenly became alert. A cold current erupted and almost froze him into an ice cube. From then on, Su Xiaoma used the excuse of "I'll go outside to keep watch" to maintain an absolute safe distance from this woman. Thud! Just as he got up, the small exquisite bottle tucked in his belt fell down. Xia Shuiyan glanced at it and said lightly, "Didn't I finish this bottle of tranquil heart and icy skin pills long ago? Why do you still have it?" Su Xiaoma picked it up and wiped off the dust on it with his sleeve. He said, "Senior sister is the first girl to give me something. Naturally, I have to keep it as a memento." At this time, if Elder Wei was present, he would definitely give him a thumbs up and praise, "Young man, you're worth teaching." "Idiot," Xia Shui said faintly. However, the layer of ice around her heart once again melted a little under her careless touch. "I'm going out. Come back and guard the door." "This." "Okay." In the middle of the night, Su Xiaoma habitually turned over and suddenly felt a burst of cold air approaching and enveloping his whole body in an instant. He was so cold that his body trembled. He woke up with a whoosh and ran outside with his short legs. "I shouldn't have slept in there." Chapter 872. Su Xiaoma was currently in the Taishan Xingzong, experiencing something that only the main character would experience. As the main character of the sect of all times, Jun Changshao was currently standing in the grassland, looking at the grass growing on the hilltop. A smile gradually appeared on his face. This kind of life of nurturing disciples in the sect, planting flowers and raising fish was actually quite good. At least it was better in terms of freedom. Unfortunately, Jun Changshao had a soul bomb tied to him, and he still had to complete the main storyline mission. He was destined to give up everything for the sake of strengthening his sect. Patriarch Elder Wei came to see him. "The new batch of herbs has matured. Should we harvest them now?" "Now, immediately." The smile on Jun Changshao's face became even brighter. Recently, all kinds of herbs were planted in the herb field to refine high-quality healing pills. They were also a big reason for going to the planar battlefield. Not long after, various kinds of herbs were delivered. Jun Changshao put them into his space ring, opened the pill pavilion, and tapped on the pills. The number of high-quality healing pills that could be refined was 423. After confirming the refinement, he muttered, 400 should be enough for now. He only planned to bring the sect's elites to the planar battlefield, so there wouldn't be a lot of people. A few pills for each person would be enough. Jun Changshao opened the mission panel and saw that there was less than a month left before the completion of the epic mission. He shook his head and sighed. Counting the days is simply torture. Patriarch Li Qingyang transmitted, "City Lord Mu is here to see you." "Oh." Jun Changshao replied and returned to the main hall. When he walked in and saw Mu Changhong, he clasped his hands and said, "City Lord Mu, we haven't seen each other for a while." Mu Changhong said, "The royal city is busy. I can't find time." Jun Changshao sat on the patriarch's chair and said with a smile, "Your daughter is very diligent in her cultivation. She has already broken through to rank 6 Martial King. If it was in the past, Mu Changhong would definitely be overjoyed. But now," he sighed. "City Lord Mu, why are you sighing?" In Jun Changshao's impression, this city lord always had a smile on his face. He gave people the feeling that no matter what he faced, he could face it with a smile. "Calm," Mu Changhong said, June, to be honest, I've been very irritated recently. Irritated? It seems like City Lord Mu has something on his mind. June Changshao assumed the posture of a little sister who was willing to listen to her worries and help her solve her problems. After a moment of silence, Mu Changhong said in a serious tone, "Sect Master June, have you heard of the plain battlefield?" June's face. I even went in and was beaten unconscious by an earth expert. Mu Changhong looked at the expression on his face and realized that very few people knew about this kind of thing. How could he possibly know about it? Thus, she explained, the dimensional battlefield is an independent space created by the great beings of the upper realm using their extraordinary abilities. When the powerhouses of various planes enter it, they can only fight endlessly. Is that so? June Changshao pretended to be curious. In terms of acting, Su Xiaoma was definitely not better than him. After all, he had read the book The Self-Cultivation of Actors in that World. This was not bragging. If June Changshao gave up on managing the sect and went to Taishan Xingzong as a spy, he would definitely be better off than a disciple. Of course, because of some innate attribute, he might not be as good as Su Xiaoma in some aspects. For example, forget it, I'll see through it and not expose it. I'll give Su Xiaoma some face. Mu Changhong said, the planar battlefield randomly chooses a location every 5 years. 2,000 Emperor-level cultivators must be sent in to fight. There's such a thing. June Changshao's face was full of surprise. He was not pretending. He really had never heard of it. Moreover, June Changshao suddenly thought of something. He hurriedly said, our Starfall continent won't be chosen, right? That's right. When he said those two words, Mu Changhong's expression was filled with sorrow and pain. He hoped that this was a joke played by the altar, but in reality, they had to enter the planar battlefield to fight. Go in now. 5 years later. June Changshao said, it's still early. So, Mu Changhong said with difficulty, I really hope that Red Lotus won't break through Wuhuang in 5 years. June Changshao's mouth twitched. Which parent doesn't want their children to have higher cultivation? Why do you have such thoughts, City Lord Mu? Sigh. Mu Changhong sighed and said, according to the rules of the higher realm, our Starfall continent must send 2,000 Wuhuang cultivators to fight in the planar battlefield for 5 years. If the number of cultivators we send in reaches a certain number, we must continue to send them in. City Lord Mu is worried that your daughter will break through Wuhuang and enter the planar battlefield? June Changshao asked. Yes. Mu Changhong said, I've lived for several hundred years. It doesn't matter if I die in there. But my daughter is still very young. If something happens to her, at this point, his voice began to tremble, and tears gathered at the corners of his eyes. He was a half-saint, and also a father. How could he accept his daughter dying in the planar battlefield? It's not that serious, right? June Changshao said. Although the planar battlefield was cruel, if enough Emperor-level cultivators and top-tier cultivators were sent, they might not necessarily be inferior to the cultivators of other planes. The system said, host, you're using your own sect strength to measure, so there's no problem. However, the Emperor-level cultivators of the Starfall continent are much weaker in the planar battlefield. For example, the yellow-level cultivators of other planes. Their overall strength is generally higher than that of the Wuhuang cultivators of the Starfall continent. If they go in, they're basically courting death. And this half-saint City Lord Mu, do you think he's stronger than the Xian-level cultivators you've killed before? After listening to the system, June Changshao fell into silence. After fighting in the planar battlefield and killing many cultivators who besieged him, there was one thing he had to admit. In the same realm, they were stronger than the cultivators of the Starfall continent. To explain it in professional terms, the Xian-level cultivators of other planes were all at the extreme level. City Lord Mu was nothing more than a high-level cultivator. Although the realm was the same, there was a difference in strength. Of course, June Patriarch could do whatever he wanted in there. Firstly, he relied on various equipment. Secondly, He was at the supreme level. There was no problem for him to jump levels. He was invincible in the same realm. Sigh. City Lord Mu sighed and said, "This time, our Starfall continent has been chosen. It's undoubtedly a huge disaster. You can't refuse." "No." Jun Changshao secretly said, quite overbearing. Since the War of the Emperors, the Starfall continent's heaven and earth attributes have been deteriorating. How can we compete with the other planes and expand our territory? Mu Changhong's face became more and more ugly. Expand our territory? Jun Changshao said, "What do you mean?" Mu Changhong briefly explained the matter, and then said, "According to the rules of the upper realm, if you develop your territory to the size of a town, you can apply to come out in advance. Only in this way can the losses be minimized." "I see." Jun Changshao understood, but muttered in his heart, expanding to the size of a town is not difficult. Chapter 873. The rule of the planar battlefield was that as long as one side expanded their territory to the size of a town, they could apply to leave in advance. In Jun Changshao's opinion, this was very easy. After all, although he was beaten up by the Earth-ranked powerhouses in the planar battlefield, the stronghold representing the falling star continent had expanded a lot due to his hard work. Hard work? The system complained, "Are you sure you weren't surrounded and forced to fight back?" This was still very casual. If he brought Old Ding and the Purple King and seriously fought, even if it didn't expand to the size of a town, it wouldn't be a problem to expand to the size of a city. Wait a minute. Suddenly, Jun Changshao thought of something and said to himself, "Isn't the falling star continent only accessible after 5 years? Why did the stronghold representing the falling star continent come out in advance?" The system said, "The host is a martial artist from the falling star continent." Naturally, the falling star continent's territory was designated after sneaking in. Jun Changshao's mouth twitched. "You mean, they'll be teleported there when they enter the planar battlefield 5 years later?" "Should be," the system said. Jun Changshao's expression immediately became interesting. "I can bring my disciples there in advance. If we expand the territory inside in 5 years, won't they be stunned when they come in?" The system said, "That's true." With the teleportation gate, Jun Patriarch could bring disciples who met the requirements into the planar battlefield at any time. This was equivalent to being 5 years faster than the falling star continent. The female system had said that the territory could only be seized for 1 year, so they would definitely go in frequently. After 5 years, the territory inside would be expanded to a city. When the falling star continent martial artists came in, the scene would definitely be City Lord Mu. Jun Changshao said, "Red Lotus's aptitude is good. If she really wants to break through, there's no stopping her, so don't be too pessimistic. Why don't we take one step at a time? Maybe we'll be able to come out immediately after entering the planar battlefield 5 years later." Since he knew that the falling star continent was chosen to participate in the planar battlefield, as a native here, he had to do something for everyone. The system, bah! The people in the Decimo suicide tower didn't want to take the mission, saying there were benefits, so they reluctantly accepted it. What would the host do for everyone out of kindness? Impossible. Please. Jun Changshao broke down. Don't think of me as such a selfish person. After all, I'm also a part of the Starfall continent. Right away. Mu Changhong shook his head and said bitterly, "To tell you the truth, Jun Patriarch, I and some of the other martial practitioners who are preparing to enter are all prepared to die in battle." The altars informed many major sects and factions about the matter of participating in the planar battlefield, as well as the top loose cultivators. Those who decided to go to the front lines didn't plan on coming back alive. They did everything they could to expand their territories and fight for a chance to survive for their juniors. Mu Changhong thought so too. The only thing he and the other experts of the older generation could do was to sacrifice themselves to prevent more falling star continent cultivators from dying. They were undoubtedly great, but at the same time, they were forced to do so because they could not disobey the will of the upper realm, and they could not avoid it either. They could only choose to contribute. It's not that exaggerated. Jun Changshao comforted him, maybe there will be a miracle when that day comes. Miracle? Mu Changhong smiled bitterly. However, he could also see that Jun Changshao did not care about the planar battlefield. This was understandable. After all, he was still very young and did not have much experience. Moreover, the sect was prospering day by day. It was inevitable that he would have the mentality of, who else can do it but me? Jun Patriarch. Mu Changhong said, you've also reached emperor level. Although you're not in the list of the first batch to enter, you still have to be prepared at all times. This was the purpose of his visit to the sect of all times today. It was not to visit his daughter, but to remind Jun Changshao so that he could be prepared for the battle within 5 years. In fact, Go Sheng had been preparing all this time. He had been preparing for almost a year. In a month's time, he would bring people to kill their way in and take revenge on the Earth-ranked powerhouse. City Lord Mu. Jun Changshao leaned forward slightly and said in a low voice, say, if a miracle happens 5 years later and we can safely pass the tribulation, but we have to pay a certain amount of natural spirit stones, will you agree? Look. The system said, I guessed right. Do something for the falling star continent out of kindness? Tui, it obviously did not have good intentions. This safety, is it referring to the falling star continent? That's fine. Mu Changhong did not hesitate and replied directly, if the falling star continent can safely pass this tribulation, not to mention natural spirit stones, we'll give you anything you want. Do the other cultivators think so too? Jun Changshao asked. Mu Changhong said seriously, the planar battlefield is extremely dangerous. Our falling star continent is far weaker than other planes. If we go in, we'll be sending our heads to our deaths. If we can pass this tribulation, not only will we avoid death, but we can also continue to be the top power of the continent. Any powerhouse will agree. Resources were indeed very important. However, they were not worth mentioning for the lives and the future of the entire falling star continent. Understood. Jun Changshao relaxed and said with a smile, City Lord Mu, as the saying goes, if you're sincere, it will happen. Maybe a miracle will happen 5 years later. He had already decided that going to the planar battlefield for revenge was too low. Since he was a member of the falling star continent, he had to do something for everyone. He had to help them pass this tribulation. Responsibility. A man's responsibility. Jun Changshao. I'm willing to shed my blood for the falling star continent. The system broke down and said, what the host is thinking now is whether the price will be based on the number of people or the number of teams in 5 years' time. Father, why are your eyes red? I'm cultivating in the sect of all times. I'm very happy that you're able to become a rank 7 martial king so quickly. Mu Changhong was trying his best to make himself look happy so that his daughter would not worry. Mu Honglian did not think too much about it. She said with a determined look, Father, I'll definitely become an emperor in the shortest time possible. Those words caused Mu Changhong's mood, which had been lifted with great difficulty, to fall to the bottom. He did not take the miracle that Jun Changshao had mentioned to heart. He was already prepared to die in battle. If his daughter became an emperor, she would definitely follow his path. Father, why are you crying? Mu Honglian was confused when she saw the tears in her father's eyes. Mu Changhong quickly raised his sleeve to wipe away his tears. He forced a smile and said, I'm just happy. After chatting with his daughter for a while, he left the sect of all times. His back seemed to be very old. Jun Patriarch is right. If I really want to break through, I can't stop it. I can only take it one step at a time. As for... Mu Changhong stopped at the foot of the mountain and looked up at the sky. He prayed in his heart, I hope that a miracle will happen one day. Patriarch. Mu Honglian was puzzled. My father is a little strange. Jun Changshao, who was standing outside the palace, said with his hands behind his back, you're breaking through at lightning speed. It's normal that you're crying tears of joy. His spiritual sense kept track of the old man's back. He thought to himself, City Lord Mu, don't worry. As long as I'm here, there will be miracles. Chapter 874. Su Xiaoma was undercover in Taixuan Shengzong as usual. Jun Changshao was also actively preparing to enter the dimensional battlefield. Knowing that the falling star continent would participate in the dimensional battlefield in 5 years, even a half-saint like City Lord Mu went in with the mentality of suicide. He decided to do something. Previously, he entered the dimensional battlefield to cause trouble purely for personal grudges. Now, it had risen to the level of a country. Of course. This premise couldn't be separated from benefits. There was nothing wrong with Jun Changshao thinking this way. If the falling star continent wanted a miracle, they couldn't just rely on praying. They had to at least do something. Not to mention, Jun Changshao put his hands in front of the camera. His handsome face leaned over and said seriously, the dimensional battlefield is extremely dangerous. If I bring people there, they might die at any time. Is it too much to ask for some benefits? Swoosh! He stepped out of the hall and entered the space-time secret realm. He began to accelerate his cultivation for the next 3 days. In the past year, although the 2 epic missions suppressed his realm and made cultivation meaningless, he could still comprehend martial arts. For example, the dragon elephant prajna palm. This palm technique had only been used to demolish buildings in the 9 Poison Temple. Its presence was very low. It wasn't that Jun Changshao didn't want to use it. It was mainly because he hadn't reached a certain level of comprehension. Its power wasn't as direct and straightforward as the red sky flame slash. Whoosh whoosh. In the secret realm, a powerful airwave formed and gradually condensed into 10 seemingly real dragon elephants. They emitted an ancient and desolate aura as if 10 ancient beasts walked out of the void. Jun Changshao stood straight like a javelin. Then, he flipped his right hand and pressed down. Dragon elephant prajna palm. Whoosh whoosh. Boom. 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 The power of 10 dragon elephants smashed down from above, and the moment it came into contact with the ground, it produced a powerful force that shocked Li Qingyang, Xiao Zuiji, and the others. Wait! Why are we here? When the patriarch is showing off, you have to be surprised. This was one of the rules of the sect of all times. When Jun Changshao first comprehended the dragon elephant prajna palm, he could only condense 1 strand of dragon elephant energy. Now that he had condensed 10 strands, his improvement was actually quite fast. In the long run, 100, 1,000, 10,000, according to the gigantic physiques of dragons and elephants, the more there were, the wider the world would need to be. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to contain them. Actually, it could be made into a pocket-sized version. At Jun Changshao's current level, he was unable to do so for the time being. Who? Withdrawing his aura, he said, I've finally comprehended 10 strands of Dracophant force. However, from the looks of it, I won't be able to gather more unless I break through to the half-step saint realm. If one wanted to comprehend a powerful martial skill to a higher level, one had to have a strong cultivation base. If he gave the green dragon crescent blade to a weak scholar, he would probably only be able to barely shave his beard. Opening the mission panel, there were only 10 days left until the settlement date. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, I'm willing to use 10 days of my lifespan in exchange for the completion of the mission. What about 10 years? Then forget it, I'll just wait. In the beginning, Jun Changshao came to the space-time mystery realm on a whim, hoping to complete the mission in advance by accelerating time. However, after entering, the mission's countdown was fixed. Obviously, he could not take advantage of it. No rush, no rush. Jun Changshao comforted himself, it'll happen sooner or later. After he bought the dragon elephant prajna palm and returned to the sect, he had made countless copies and distributed them to Li Qingyang and the others. However, because he had temporarily focused on leveling up, he did not really comprehend it much. Now that he had reached the peak of the martial king realm, it would take a long time for him to enter Wu Huang, so he had time to cultivate. The one with the best performance was He Wudi. Because he entered the realm quickly and had enough time to cultivate, he had already gathered 4 strands of Dracophant force. Yi Xingqian broke through to the martial emperor realm 1 step later than him. After comprehending the dragon elephant Prajnapam, he had successfully gathered 2 strands of Dracophant force. As the leader and second in charge of the brainstorming trio, he had been shocked by this martial art long before he started cultivating. His crazy imagination must have come from the upper realm. Actually, his imagination was not bad. It was hard to find a martial art at the level of the dragon elephant Prajnapam in the lower realm. Whoosh! Li Qingyang recited the incantation and an ancient aura erupted from his body, forming a dragon and an elephant. Although his aura was far from Jun Changxiao's, he had at least grasped the basics. Xiao Ziji, Li Fei, and the others were also comprehending it. With their talent and hard work, as well as the help of the space-time mystery realm, comprehending this powerful martial art was not a problem. Jiangya, the Ning brothers, and the others had already started comprehending the dragon elephant Prajnapam long ago. Their progress was much faster than the disciples. At present, although the high-level martial arts of the sect of all times were not as rich as those of the major sects, they were at least stronger than them in terms of level and had more development prospects. When we reach the realm battlefield, the disciples will gather the Dracophant force. The scene will be beautiful. Jun Changxiao was looking forward to it. Whoosh whoosh. When there were 5 days left until the settlement date, a powerful aura suddenly erupted from the female disciple's room. Qianqian is about to break through. Jun Changxiao, who was sitting in the room, was surprised. That woman often used her coldness to hide everything, and he could not wear sunglasses every day. Therefore, he did not expect that she would be the second disciple after He Wudi to become an emperor. Of course, he was only surprised by the breakthrough. It was understandable that she became an emperor. After all, she had inherited the legacy of the Frost Empress in Lu Prefecture. Damn it! Yi Xingqian clenched his fist and said, "Another disciple is 1 step ahead of me." As a reborn martial emperor, he had a lot of martial arts experience. In the end, He Wudi and Lu Qianqian broke through Wu Huang 1 step ahead of him. This made him feel very ashamed. "Ah no, don't cry, don't be angry. It's not that you are not good enough. It's that your unique advantage is not reflected in the sect of all times." Whoosh whoosh, a strong wave of air whistled out, containing a gush of cold air. What was originally a scorching summer season had suddenly turned into a freezing winter. Some disciples were wearing thin clothes. Under the influence of the cold air, they either silently activated the 5 elements heavenly reflection seal's fire element to raise their body temperature or put on winter clothes. This strong cold air from Siberia lasted for about an hour before it dissipated. When everything returned to normal, everyone silently took off their winter clothes. One moment it was cold, the next it was hot. The feeling of ice and fire was not pleasant. "You broke through." "I broke through." Lu Qianqian habitually leaned against the door and clasped her hands together. Because of the breakthrough, her temperament had changed. She seemed to be colder. If Xia Shuiyun was an iceberg that would not melt for 100 years, then with her Taixian ice-heart constitution, she would be an iceberg that would not melt for 10,000 years. Jun Changxiao sat at the head of the table. Because of the cold air, the atmosphere was very awkward. After a while, he said, "We will be going to the planar battlefield in a few days. You have to be prepared." "Okay." Lu Qianqian said, "Patriarch, if you have nothing else to say, I will take my leave first." "Go." Jun Changxiao waved his hand and thought to himself, although she is still very cold, her tone is much warmer than before. Everyone in the sect was used to Lu Qianqian's cold personality. Sometimes, when she went out, the feeling of ice and snow disappeared, and they were not used to it. 5 more days. Jun Changxiao leaned against his chair and wailed, "Come quickly. I am so anxious that I have constipation for a few days." You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.